beyond for the 2 days international webinar on alternate learning practices by states and union territories and selected countries during COVID pandemic, good practices and lessons learned. The international webinar is organized by SCST-RTI.
Suddenly the sound is not coming. No sound. Sir, no sound.
It is muted. SCST-RTI is muted. Yeah.
Start again. Sorry for this disturbance which is caused because of some technical error. Once again, I welcome all the esteemed panelists, speakers and dignitaries who have joined with us from within the country and beyond for the 2 days international webinar on alternate learning practices by states and union territories and selected countries during COVID pandemic, good practices and lessons learned. This international webinar is being organized by SCST-RTI, Government of Odisha, in collaboration with Unicef and with the financial support from Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. The entire world is grappling with the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, and the school education and learning among children have been severely impacted, especially among the vulnerable communities who have very seldom access to the digital means. Concerned about the quality learning and continuance of education, many innovative approaches have been adopted by governments at the state, national and international level, especially for the vulnerable communities. In this 2-day webinar, we look forward to sharing of good practices and innovative models of alternate learning practices from different countries and states so that a roadmap for alternate learning strategy can be developed for meaningful continuity of education. With these words, I would request Professor Dr. A.B. Ota sir, who is Advisor cum Director at SCST-RTI Government of Odisha, to kindly deliver the welcome address. Sir.
Thank you. Honorable Development Commissioner cum ACS, Government of Odisha, Sri P.K. Jaina sir, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, Dr. Nabaljit Kapoorji, Principal Secretary, ST and SC Department, Government of Odisha, Madam Ranjana Chopra, Director, ST, Madam Poonam Guha, Dr. Terry Junian, Chief of Education Section, Unicef, State Head, Unicef, Monica, Director of State TRIs, Representative of COEs, Senior Officials of Welfare Department, Senior Officials of Government of India, Chairpersons of the 4 technical sessions, Professor H.K. Sanapati, former Director NCERT, Sri Satyabat Sahu, Principal Secretary, School and Mass Education, Government of Odisha, Sri Santosh Sadangi, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Education, Government of India, esteemed panelists from Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and from India, Kerala, Assam, Bihar, and all esteemed dignitaries who are attending this webinar. I extend a very warm welcome to you all to this very important experience sharing international webinar on an important topic, alternate learning practices by state and selected countries during COVID pandemic, good practices and lessons learned. This has a great relevance, as you know, from the present COVID pandemic situation. Sir, as you know, the world is passing through a very bad time. Children all over the world who have not gone to their schools and institutions for more than 17 months, continuance of their studies has become a very, very big challenge throughout the world. Each state inside the country and each country in the world have adopted some kind of an alternate learning strategy through virtual mode to cope with the situation. The situation for the alternate learning adopted, which is mostly technology driven, is extremely difficult in case of tribal children, as they are inhabited in inaccessible pockets where connectivity is a big issue. Despite the challenges of connectivity, the state government of Odisha have adopted a novel strategy for alternate learning for scheduled tribe and scheduled caste children, which will be shared by Director ST as a panelist today. In fact, SCST-RTI thought it prudent to hold a webinar wherein good examples adopted by some countries and some states, as well as organizations like Pratham, during COVID time of alternate learning will be placed and discussed so that one can learn how best the alternate learning practices in general and for the tribal children in particular can be developed and extended more effective as an effective teaching learning practice. In this backdrop, with the support of Ministry of Tribal Affairs and with the collaboration of Unicef, Government of Odisha has decided to hold this international webinar. I am sure the two-day webinar will be extremely useful for developing better strategies, learning from the rich experiences that will be deliberated during the webinar. At the end, I once again welcome DC cum ACS, Government of Odisha, Srijana, and Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Dr. Kapoor, who, despite their busy schedule, have agreed to come and grace the occasion. Thank you. I welcome once again.
Thank you, sir. Now, with the permission of the inaugural panel, sir, I would like to humbly submit that there is a minor alteration we have to do in this inaugural session because Dr. Navaljeet Kapoor, sir, Joint Secretary to Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, who is present here during this inaugural session, has to leave early due to some pressing assignments. So, on his request, and with the permission of the inaugural panel members, I would now request Dr. Navaljeet Kapoor, sir, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, to kindly deliver his address.
I think he is not in the seat. We will request Director ST, Department of ST Department, Punam, kindly keep her deliberation.
Thank you, sir. Respected AC cum ACS Odisha, and we are very soon expecting Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Principal Secretary, STSC Department, Odisha, Chief of Education Section, Unicef. At the outset, I take this opportunity to extend warm greetings and gratitude to all dignitaries who spared their time for this international webinar today. In particular, I wish to thank Director SCST RTI Odisha for conceptualizing this webinar with speakers and dignitaries from around the globe on alternate learning practices by states and union territories and selected countries during COVID pandemic, good practices and lessons learned. Malcolm X once said, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." Unquote. True to the core, education is investment, and the better we invest in quality and quantity among our tiny tots, we shall reap rich dividends in promising young, dedicated intellectuals and citizens. In Odisha, the ST and SC Development Department provides residential schooling to more than 5 lakh students. When the pandemic struck, the hostels were closed, and it is then that the department, under the leadership of Principal Secretary, implemented the Alternative Learning and Mentorship Program, by which not only was digital learning provided to students who could avail it, but also mentor teachers reached them in their villages with study material. Several other initiatives like psychological counseling, workbooks, e-competitions were also conducted. This webinar would provide a great learning experience in understanding educational initiatives undertaken by other states and countries during the current pandemic. Learning is improving. Also, as the going gets tough, the tough get going. So, let us join hands and learn from each other's experience to mitigate the crisis in education brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic for our future, our children. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your valuable insights and inputs. And Madam, we will definitely benefit more from your deliberation on the Odisha experience on alternate learning and mentorship practices during the later part of the day today. We look
Thank you
forward
so
to your
much.
presentation, Madam. Now I would request, Dr. Navaljeet Kapoor sir to kindly deliver his address. Sir, please.
I think.
Sir, kindly unmute, sir. Eh? Sir, sir, you are not audible, sir. No, sir, you are not audible, sir. Eh? Sir, there is some connectivity problem from your side, sir. You are not audible, sir. Eh? कौन है? असला हैं कौन करेगा भाई कौन करेगा
मैंने सुना जाऊंगी there is some connectivity problem at this end.
Reconnect.
Sir, probably you should rejoin or kindly go to your room. That will be better, sir. Because, sir, please, sir. We are going ahead with Ranjana ma'am, and then you will speak, sir. Go.
Since there is a connectivity problem at Sir's end, now I would request Madam Ranjana Chopra, Principal Secretary, ST and SC Development Department, Government of Odisha, to kindly deliver the inaugural address and setting the contents to the webinar. Madam Ranjana Chopra.
Yeah, thank you very much. The chief guest of today's inaugural function, Development Commissioner cum ACS, Joint Secretary, Government of India, Mr. Navaljeet Kapoor, Mr. Dwanian, the Head of Education, Unicef, officers of the STSC Development Department, the participants, teachers, DWOs, PITTAs, team and staff of Unicef. A very good morning to all of you. You see, I have been asked to set the context, and I thought that it will be a good opportunity for me to take you through the story that Odisha has charted in the last 15 months. In the month of March, if you would recall, in March 2020, when COVID pandemic started, the schools were closed down, the hostels were shut down, and children were sent back home. Now, it was a challenge, learning challenge for all the children throughout the world, in all the states of the country. But for tribal children especially, it was a very big challenge, because the tribal children, as you are all aware, are living in multiple layers of vulnerabilities. And because the tribal children, with great difficulty over a period of time, Government of Odisha had strengthened the tribal education by reaching out to remote areas, building hostels, encouraging and motivating tribal parents and communities to send their children to the schools and these hostels. And over a period of time, these institutions have stabilized. And now we are proud to say that there are about 6 lakh children who are studying in different hostels in the state of Odisha and also taking up primary, secondary level education. Now, but when this pandemic started, the first challenge before us was to know how our children are doing, the welfare of the children. So we decided that, we will have a program in case children are not able to come to school, let our teachers try and reach out to the children. This made the beginning of alternate learning and mentorship program in which our teacher mentors went. At the same time, we put a team together by which we were able to create audiovisual content and then start pushing the content to the children through WhatsApp. But while we were doing it, we realized after the feedback we took, we realized that only about 50,000 children out of a cohort of about 3.5 lakh, 4 lakh children whom we were targeting had mobile phones and internet connectivity. So hence the main focus of the program continued to be on the teacher mentors who were going to the different villages and collecting students. With the help of Unicef, we did a quick rapid assessment in the 3rd month of the program, and the results were very, very encouraging. So we ran the program in the academic year 2020-21, established telephonic counseling to give moral support to and psychological support to our children. And in the year 2021-22, based on our learnings from the first round of alternate learning and mentorship program, we have now revised the contours of the program, and not only mentors and audiovisual content, now we are trying to raise community volunteers. You see, in remote tribal villages, any individual, man or woman, whether he's a high school student or a high school dropout, whether she is a part of a civil society organization, we would like them to join hands with the department and with government of Orissa to make sure that these tribal children who are now at home for the last 15, 16 months are reconnected or connected to the process of learning. The second major challenge is that they should not only be connected to the process of learning. We need to make sure that the learning that has happened over the last couple of years while they were in the residential schools and the other schools, those learnings should not be erased from their minds forever. So for that, we have prepared small recap modules, which these community volunteers will be discharging and implementing. But I am sure that my director during her session would be talking about these programs in detail. But I will in brief tell you as to what are the 3 major learnings from this initiative. The first major learning is that when we talk of children in rural areas or we talk of the children who are in tribal areas, we have to keep in mind that the geographical location will play an important role. Children who are closer to accessible pockets, children where the main road, motorable roads are leading, where it is easy to travel, in today's time will have a better opportunity, better possibility of accessing education than the children who are more remoter as far as geography is concerned. Second biggest learning from us is that digital divide is something that has become so critical in our country, especially for our students, and that unless and until we today invest in finding digital solutions, the future of our children also we will not be able to secure. So we will have to find digital solutions, and my department at this point of time is experimenting with 3 models, experimenting with iPads, experimenting with smartphones, and experimenting with smart classrooms. And it is only after a few months we would be able to finalize the strategy as well as bridging the digital divide is concerned. And the final and the third major learning is that while we are concentrating on developing the material, audiovisual content, and making sure that a lot of revision material is being sent to the children, one important thing that sometimes is lost is the linguistic vulnerability that the tribal children are facing. Most of the material that is developed is in the mainstream language, which is completely alien to our tribal children. So learning from that, we have also launched another program called Samhati, which will actually try to bridge the linguistic divide also between the tribal and the mainstream children. Now, with this program, with this international webinar, the speakers have been chosen by us with great deal of effort and deliberations because We wanted not only a peep into how the governments work, so we have 4 state governments participating. We wanted as to what are the best practices. I'm happy to report that we have delegates from Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bhutan who would be joining us. But more importantly, it is the civil society. We have Ms. Rukmani Banerjee, who is one of the pioneers behind the right to education, and we have Professor Senapati, who has actually led the NCRT for a very long time. So these are the people who have tremendous insight into the sector of education, and we are hoping that through the deliberations over these past 2 days, we would be able to make a roadmap for alternative strategies for Orissa and for everyone else, and that these 2-day webinar will be an extremely enriching and learning experience for us. I would once again like to thank all the participants, and especially Development Commissioner cum ACS, who has taken out time from his busy schedule to grace the occasion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam, for so articulately setting the tone to the webinar. We believe the webinar will help us to learn from the experiences of the participating states and the countries, and we believe that we can come up with an alternate learning strategies and innovations for Orissa. Thank you, madam, once again. And request Dr. Navaljeet Kapoor, sir, who is there already with us, and Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, to kindly deliver his address.
We still can't hear you. Do you want to log in from your device, from your mobile phone, and then see in case we can hear you?
Sir, we are unable to hear you, sir.
So, I think you are. Sir, you are muted, sir.
Sir, we are, sir, sorry to interrupt, sir. We are still unable to hear you, sir. So there is some problem maybe at your end, sir. If you can kindly rejoin.
Do you want to log in from your mobile? Probably we may be able to hear you from if you log in from your mobile. We can't hear you.
I think there is a problem in Delhi end.
Yes, sir. It seems,
Yes,
sir.
Dr. Uttash, let's go ahead with Unicef Education Head,
Yes.
and then probably
Yes.
back to
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, moving ahead, madam, we will move ahead now, and we are pleased to have with us Dr. Terry Damian, Chief of Education at Unicef India Country Office, New Delhi. And prior to joining Unicef India, Dr. Terry was the Chief Education for Unicef Nigeria. And Dr. Durin has more than 25 years of experience as an education professional and has contributed immensely towards designing and implementation of policies and programs in education sector, nationally and internationally.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Sorry. Good morning. Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Department of Government of India, Dr. Navaljeet Kapoor, Additional Chief Secretary cum Development Commissioner, Government of Odisha, Mr. Pradeep Kumar Jana, Principal Secretary, STSD Development Department, Government of Odisha, Mrs. Ranjana Chopra, the Director ST, Mrs. Poonam, Director SC STRTI, Professor Ota, official, educationalists, colleagues, participants. Good morning. I'm very excited to be here at this event today. I think it's very timely and very worthwhile. The education systems in Odisha, India, and globally are facing tremendous challenges and the push to change. COVID-19 has created disruptions in children's learning, 286 million across India, millions more globally. In addition, teachers and parents have had to adapt to supporting remote learning at home, at the community level. Challenges force us to think out of the box. And I think the Madam Principal Secretary gave some really good examples already in her remarks of alternative learning and teaching practices, especially to reach children in vulnerable communities, such as the tribal children, who have been the most impacted. We need to reimagine learning. The continuity of learning means children do not lose out on learning in any situation, not just COVID, in any situation. COVID-19 has been a challenge for the continuity of learning, but I think lessons from this last year must be used to strengthen the delivery of education going forward. How do we apply them, maximize them, and improve education in the home, the community, and the school? All children, especially the most marginalized, have the right to a quality, relevant education, especially in a language they know, even when schools are closed. Systems should be in place to mitigate the disruption of learning using a mixture of technology and non-technology solutions. Actions are being taken towards this goal, the continuity of learning, efforts to reimagine education. And I'm aware of the STST department in Odisha's efforts to institutionalize our academic learning mentorship program that is reaching 300,000 children from tribal communities. Thus, SCST-RTI has organized this international webinar on sharing and learning of best practices on the continuity of learning from the local to the international, and then reapplying them. Through this webinar, STST department, we hope there will be better coordination, networking, partnership, and innovation for the effective implementation of alternative learning approaches that are child-focused, aiming at bringing learning to all children, no matter where they are. This webinar, with solid experiences, lessons on alternative learning practices, will provide a solid direction in sustainable education interventions, their design and rollout for the most marginalized across India and globally, and help us reimagine learning education for each child. With this, I extend my best wishes for the success of this webinar and affirm Unicef stands committed to supporting innovation and reimagining education with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your rich experiences, and we believe that the webinar will pave out ways for collaborations and meaningful engagements for collective value-based engagements on this topic for effective implementation of alternate learning during the COVID-19 situation. Thank you once again, sir. Now,
Dr. Uttam, Mr. Nawaljit Kapoor will not be joining us. He's disconnected.
Okay.
Right, sir. So moving on.
Right.
We are pleased to announce the signing of MOU for Nutri Garden promotion in schools under the ST and SC Development Department, Government of Odisha. The MOU will be signed by Madam Guha Poonam Das Kumar, Director ST, on behalf of ST and SC Development Department, Government of Odisha, and Shri Manoj Gopal Krishna, CEO, Care India Solutions for Sustainable Development.
Have signed.
Thank you, madam. And if Manoj sir can also like show the MOU, then we can have a snapshot also. Yet another proactive initiative by Government of Odisha, and a big round of applause.
It's so the.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Nice, Pradeep sir. This is.
Now we are honored to have with us Sri Pradeep Kumar Jaina sir, Development Commissioner cum Additional Chief Secretary to Government of Odisha. I would now request sir to kindly deliver his address.
Thank you, Poonam. It's a privilege to be part of such a beautifully designed international webinar, which is so relevant to us during this most difficult phase that all of us are facing in last 1.5 years. And I must thank Dr. Ota, Director SCST RTI, and Ranjana, Poonam, and the entire team from SCST Development Department of Odisha for conceptualizing and launching this webinar today, which would, I'm sure, benefit all the participants, most of whom are from Odisha, our officers, our teachers, our cutting-edge workers. So this will be immensely benefiting us to learn from this such good panelist, rich panel, I'm saying. And we are going to see experiences from Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives, Sri Lanka, and some successful experiments from Pratham, then Chhattisgarh, Kerala, Bihar, so Assam. This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for our officers to learn from such good experiments, and maybe this would help us in revisiting our approaches, and maybe we can redesign, taking all good things from various experiments for designing a robust intervention program in the state. To that extent, I thank the department and congratulate the department for such an endeavor. And I must thank Unicef, who has been a very fantastic, fabulous partner with us in our entire journey. I must thank Dr. Terry Durinan, as well as Monica, State Head Bhubaneswar, who has been always with us, whether it is in tribal education, whether it is women and child development, whether it is health, whether it is disaster management. So Monica is always there, and we are happy that UNICEF is a partner in this entire organization. And Government of India, yes, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, we thank them for sponsoring this event. So this is a very fantastic opportunity, and that's why I am very happy, because in the last 1.5 years, a lot of experiments have taken place in many parts of the world. And in Odisha also, as our Principal Secretary has explained, many things are happening with the help of UNICEF, with the help of local partners. Many things are happening. But then the challenges are very, very different. And this particular difficult situation that the humanity is facing, we don't know when it is going to end, and whether this is the last pandemic we are going to see in our lifetime. or it is going to appear in some form or in another nature or in another kind. So therefore, whatever we are now passing through and whatever experiments we are doing and whatever interventions we are planning, we must plan it in such a manner that in future similar situation, we should not face the problems that we have faced in last 1.5 years, and we can continue with our interventions in different sectors, including education sector, including tribal development sector. So this webinar possibly would help us designing programs which will be more sustainable and can help us in similar difficult situations in case we face them in future. This pandemic has anyway impacted everybody, cutting across sectors, cutting across economies, geographies. But unfortunately, the most disadvantaged, the most adversely impacted are the poor and the vulnerables. And among the poor and vulnerable, the tribal poor are the most and the worst affected. And anyway, the economy has been shattered. The livelihoods opportunities are very minimum, and large chunk of the population, poor, particularly poor, have been pushed lower in the income cycle, and many of them are now in a very difficult situation. And when coming to the education sector, everybody has suffered, including college-going students, university students. So also the students at the schools. But many states, many countries have experimented with many things, mostly technology-driven. But sometimes this technology-driven education delivery may not work in situations where there are geographic constraints or geographic divides. And as our principal secretary has very nicely put it, the three divides: geographic divides, the digital divides, and linguistic divides. These three divides makes it more difficult for tribal children, and particularly those who are living in hills, living in situations where communication, physical communication is a challenge, where internet and mobile connection is a distant dream. In such a situation, possibly technology-driven solutions may not work very well. Even if we distribute laptops, iPads, or any other pads, smartphones, in the absence of mobile and internet connectivity, all these gadgets are not going to help. Similarly, the television-based interventions may not work in those difficult areas, and particularly when it comes to Orissa, where 1/3 of our Gram Panchayats don't have internet connectivity. 15,000 villages do not even have a decent 2G communication. Designing or depending on digital delivery may not work well for these tribal children. Therefore, we must think of alternatives, physical-based programs, and what our Principal Secretary Ranjana Chopra has said, the alternative learning through mentors. We are trying to send our teachers to teach, but then there are problems because there are so many villages and so less teachers. So it may not be possible to cover every village and deliver the entire course. So basically what we have tried in the past is that somehow some minimum contact with our children and some minimum delivery of contents have been tried. Therefore, the new approach, which with the help of Unicef, the department is trying, may possibly work out well, or maybe this delivery method we can review after listening to all those successful experiments over these 2 days. Having community volunteers from villages, giving them basic little training and allowing them to interact with the children and teach them through bridge courses is a wonderful idea, but I'm not very sure to what extent it will work well, but maybe with inputs from Maldives, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan, and maybe particularly Pratham's experiment and the experiments from Bihar and other states, Chhattisgarh particularly, this Bastar collector, I believe is one of the yes, CEO Bastar, he is a panelist. So possibly such learnings might help us in redesigning our program. But the only thing that I would suggest that while designing any program, these three divides which our principal secretary has outlined must be taken into account. Along with that, one more problem is there during these difficult times when income opportunities are very limited and the households may be going to different places, may have left their places to some other places, locations for earning their livelihoods, and the children may be accompanying the parents or giving some additional hands to the parents to make some extra earning also have to be factored in while designing any program. And as I said, this is a big learning. This 1.5 years have been a big learning. And next few months, in case, and now there are again forecast that there will be a third wave. And if that happens, this academic year also will be lost to a large extent. So in such a situation, we need to evolve good alternate teaching learning methods. And as I said, we must design it such a manner that they can be mainstreamed in normal times also. And in case of any future situations also, this will help us. So let us learn from all these good experiments. Let us deliver it over these 2 days and all the good learnings. Ranjana, Poonam, and Dr. Ota will consolidate, and maybe we will have a detailed discussion at the government level to roll out a robust alternate learning delivery method, not only for tribal children, even all these good learnings will mainstream to the normal schools of the government in Odisha. So I wish this webinar a great success, and I am looking forward to the findings and further deliberations with Dr. Ota, Ranjana, Poonam, and their team in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I assure you that whatever good learning experiences we'll have, we'll put it in a proceeding kind of a manner, and we'll put it forward to you through the department.
Thank you, sir. And coming towards the end of the inaugural session, I would request Madam Kalpana Patnaik, Joint Director, SC/ST/RTI, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
On behalf of SC/ST/RTI, it is my privilege to propose vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who have graced this inaugural session. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Sri P.K. Jena, Development Commissioner from ACS, Government of Odisha, for his kind presence and valuable inaugural address. I express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Navaljeet Kapoor, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, for his motivation and support. I extend my sincere thanks to Terry Durnian, Chief of Education Section, Unicef India, for his thought-provoking and insightful address. My sincere gratitude and thanks goes to Madam Ranjana Chopra, Principal Secretary, ST and SC Development Department, Government of Odisha, for having graced the occasion and for her consistent guidance, encouragement, and support. I extend my sincere thanks to Madam Poonam Guha, Director STC Development Department, Government of Odisha, for her motivational and encouraging address. My sincere thanks and gratitude to Professor Dr. A.B. Ota, Advisor cum Director and Special Secretary, SC/ST/RTI, for his painstaking efforts, consistent guidance, and supervision in making this international webinar a reality. I extend my honest gratitude to Unicef for their collaboration and cooperation. I am grateful to all senior officers of Ministry of Tribal Affairs, TRI directors and directors of COEs, officers of Government of Odisha, resource persons, scholars, and participants for their kind presence in the webinar. I extend my sincere thanks to one and all who have worked persistently to organize this webinar and making this inaugural session a success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with this, we come to the end of the inaugural session. And we would start the technical session 1. Right away. And I would request all the participants to kindly be on the link. And as we will be immediately starting the technical session 1, which is on the education of tribal children at elementary and secondary level, understanding the barriers and solutions for children. In this session, we have 3 presentations. The first one is education of tribal children in COVID context, then mother tongue based education, and the third one is National Education Policy 2020 and education of tribal children. The entire session would be of 1.5 hours, and each presentation, I would request the presenters that to keep their presentation of 15 to 20 minutes maximum. And as I will introduce the presenters, first I would request and welcome Professor Dr. A.B. Hota sir to kindly chair the session. Let me take this privilege to also introduce Professor Hota, who is my director also, and to introduce to the entire participants and the panelists. Professor Dr. A.B. Hota, Advisor cum Director and Special Secretary to Government of Orissa in the SCST-RTI. He is a professor of anthropology. Dr. Hota has expertise in socio-cultural and development anthropology and has worked for over more than 2 decades in areas of tribal development and related issues, a subject that he is so very passionate about. As an IAS officer, Professor Hota has handled various important portfolios and assignments in the Government of Orissa. An anthropologist of international repute and a bureaucrat par excellence, Professor Hota is currently handling the position of Advisor cum Director, Special Secretary, SCST-RTI, Government of Orissa. Sir, I again welcome you and request you to kindly chair this session.
Thank you so much. In fact, as Sweta has already explained you, Development Commissioner also spoke to you, Principal Secretary, Director ST, they have all explained you why we have done this, webinar. This, the entire world has been grappled with this COVID pandemic, and the worst sufferers are the children. As I have told, for past 17 months, the children have not gone to the school. Normally, education takes place through physical mode, but now they are staying back at home through virtual mode. The transactions are done. And let me tell you, when we talk about our children, tribal children in particular, as Development Commissioner has already explained in his inaugural session, they are located in very remote places where connectivity. So we have not stopped, the Government of Odisha has not stopped, they have tried to overcome that problem. And they have done an alternate learning and monitoring, system by which we have been providing teaching to our children in the village, keeping our teachers, as the mentors. It will be explained to you today in the afternoon session. But then the very purpose as to why we have done this, webinar is to find out what are the strategies adopted by various, countries, various states in addressing the issue. We would like to benefit out of the experience and would like to stitch the good experiences, good components, and would like to come up with a robust, alternate learning method by which we can do even better, during the bad times to come, if at all it comes. Having said that, this session is meant for education of tribal children at elementary and secondary level, and trying to understand the barriers and solutions for children. Well, we have three very, domain experts in the line who will be speaking today. Rukmini Banerjee from Pratham Education, she will tell you about the experiences they have undertaken in dealing with the tribal children in COVID situation. We have another, international reputed professor on MLE particularly, who will be speaking on how mother tongue education, multilingual education has been of help to the tribals in this COVID situation and how it can be used as a tool to address. The third one will be said by somebody who was responsible in the formulation of 2020 National Education Policy, wherein he would like to say what the NEP 2020 promises for the tribal children. I think these are the three presentations which have been flagged in this session. I would now request my friend Shweta to please welcome Rukmini Banerjee from Pratham Education to speak on education of tribal children in COVID context. But before we hand over the dais to her, I would request Shweta to please introduce Rukmini Banerjee, ma'am.
Madam Dr. Rukmini Banerjee, she is the CEO of Pratham. Dr. Rukmini Banerjee has been with Pratham since 1996 and has extensive field experience in program design and implementation in rural and urban areas. Madam Rukmini also led Pratham's research and assessment activities, including the well-known Annual Status of Education Report effort from 2005 to 2014. She took over as the CEO of Pratham in July 2015. Madam, we once again welcome you and request you to kindly go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you so much. Namaste to everyone who's listening. I can see you have a very big audience, both from Odisha and from elsewhere. And for me, it is indeed a very big privilege to share the virtual stage with you, Professor Ota, with Dr. Mohanty, and with Professor Senapati. I have been really looking forward to this session because I think we have a lot to learn from my other speakers. I thought I would start. I need to share my screen. Can I do that? Ma'am, is it possible for me to share my screen?
They are sharing, Rukmini. They are just sharing.
Okay. Yeah. So I thought I would do three things because the session talks about both primary school age as well as secondary. And so I thought what I can do is give a little bit of where were we before, how did we change during the COVID time, and based on kind of lessons learned, challenges faced, some solutions which have emerged, what can we look ahead? So I thought this picture would be a very good one, that we are normally used to seeing classrooms as in walls and windows and doors. But this is a picture from one of our programs in Odisha where the girls who are getting ready for taking their 10th exam, this is how they were studying. And you can also see that on our logo, which is usually a smiling blackboard, which is on the left side, we now have put a mask on so that we remember that we are in a very difficult time and therefore have to operate differently from how we are normally doing. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to give a quick overview of the situation. And I've pulled some data from the ASAR reports just to give us a view. Next slide will give you a sense of where we were, the last major annual status of education survey. If we go to the next slide, we'll show you, was in 2018. And what I did is first give you an Odisha view and then give you maybe a regional view of different parts of Odisha. I have picked out arithmetic because I know that Professor Mohanty will talk about language. And so I thought that a little spotlight on basic foundational arithmetic or numeracy would be a good thing. And very quickly, I want to show you that if we look at Odisha and compare it with India, you can see that especially for the primary grades, the numbers from Odisha are actually a little bit higher than the all India average. So if I look at standard 3 and I take one indicator, which is can children do subtraction problems, which have borrowing in them, you can see that roughly in Odisha, the grade level, if I say in standard 3, this is one indicator that you're at grade level, about a third of children prior to COVID were at grade level, which means that there is a lot of children who even in normal times in across the state needed help. That number, if you see for all India, is lower. All India number for children at grade level and standard 3 is at 20%. So 1 out of 5, whereas in Odisha, we can say it is closer to 1 out of 3. Let us just jump to standard 8. 8 years of uninterrupted schooling. These are children from 2018, so they did not have any interruption. And we see both for Odisha as well as for India, about 40% of children are in standard 8, but still struggling with basic foundational numeracy. And I think it's just a good idea to remember that even prior to COVID, we had very high enrollment, but we had some serious issues in bringing the basic foundational level of our numeracy and literacy to a required grade level. The next slide just gives you a quick picture across different regions of Odisha. Our focus today is really on tribal areas, and I think that I tried to club these, and I think it is your south set of districts which are largely and predominantly tribal. And if you look across any of these indicators, we see that South is obviously a little bit behind the others. But the reason I put 2016 and 18 numbers is that we can see considerable progress even between those 2 years and across all the regions, but also in the South. One of the reasons for my bringing out these ASER numbers is we have a very long, from 2005 till 2018, almost annual district-wise, some very basic numbers. And if the department should feel it is useful, we are happy to pull out any trends over time that you may find useful. I find trends over time useful because it gives you a sense that in normal times, how well was a system able to accelerate? And that should give us some benchmarks about when schools become functional again, what we will be able to do. So this was just a very broad overview to say that we need to understand that in terms of enrollment, we were doing very well prior to COVID. But in terms of learning, we had wide variations at the same grade level and a lot of variations across regions in terms of basic learning levels even before COVID. If we move to the next slide, I wanted to just give you a little bit of a background so that you can understand the where we are coming from. And again, I'll use the same way. What were we doing pre-COVID and how did we adapt looking at the pandemic situation? Next slide. So Pratham's programs or presence, you can say, is in this form in Odisha. We run 2 kinds of programs largely. One is how to help primary school children improve on their basic reading and arithmetic. And the other one is how do we help girls who have not had the opportunity to finish 10th standard, how do we help them to finish? So I thought one example from primary years and one example from secondary years may be useful in this conversation. Next slide. In our primary school program, we basically work in 10 districts across the state in clusters of 25 villages each. The national program is called Hamara Gaon, and it works in Odisha as well. 2 aims, we work inside the school as well as in the community. And the overall aim is how do we get all children to be reading and to be doing basic arithmetic. And second is how do we get community members to take ownership and support their children's basic learning. The reason I put this is because when you go to the next slide, you'll see that in all of our programs, even prior to COVID, the community plays a major role. Here is something, again, as you can see, we are very fond of measurement. We like to measure progress because everything that we do should lead to some progress. And in case it is not, then we should know how to fix it. So this is on a basic reading. And again, I divided up the predominantly tribal villages from the others, just to give you a sense of what progress there is. The method that we use to teach children reading and arithmetic is called teaching at the right level. Quite well known, it has been evaluated by internationally many times. And we see that in normal times, this is data from 2019-20, in a period of 30-40 days, if we put the grade level curriculum aside for a few hours in the day, you can actually take children who are in class 3, 4, and 5 quite quickly to higher reading levels. Whether it is in predominantly tribal villages or in others, you see significant progress in a very short period of time within our schools. So this also leaves the benchmark that quick progress is possible if you start at where the child is and move upwards from there. Into the details of this method, we can maybe discuss it later. But every child, we feel, to begin with, should be able to read simple stories with comprehension, with being able to discuss it. And then that sets the foundation for later, much more progress in language. If you go to the next slide, then I can start telling you how did we move from our primarily face-to-face. We worked face-to-face in school, in our instructional programs. We worked face-to-face in the community with our community groups of children. Every village that we work, every pada or mohalla or hamlet has a small children's group. So once the pandemic hit us and complete lockdown started, we were at a wit's end because we had also only worked in a face-to-face mode. And so here very quickly, and I think you might have to click to get all the text on this slide up, we did a couple of things which I think a lot of other people did. We first decided that we must reach out to everybody we knew. So every village were we able to reach at least one contact somehow, obviously by the phone. Next was within every village, we knew from our teams what the different hamlets and padas were. So are you able to find at least one contact in each of the hamlets? And once you found a contact in each of the hamlets through phone, can you reach to the maximum number of families in that hamlet? And I'll show you and through this, then we started a two-way communication. As Madam Ranjana said, WhatsApp was with a very limited set of people. So we moved to SMS, but largely what we did is establish a two-way communication so that each family got a phone call from somebody from Pratham they actually knew from before. And it is really these social structures in the community that really enabled us to remain connected and engaged through the period of the pandemic. On the next slide, I want to just give you a view. It's a very nice little picture from one of our villages, and it gives you a sense that this is a way in which every one of our team members made maps of their villages so as to see that when I'm connecting, where am I connecting? Who is my main contact? And this mapping at the sub-village level was extremely useful because there are certain hamlets in the village which are more needy than others. And if you know the village like our people did or school teachers will, then being able to map it and move it is very useful. Next slide, please. Now, our whole aim was that during this time, because of the Anganwadi or school is closed, how can you initiate contact within the home or family, which I've described to you, in the hamlet and then at the village level. At the hamlet level, once some movement was possible, July, August last year, we began to do, which Mr. Pradeep mentioned as well, and I think Ranjana ji mentioned as well, is we mobilized community volunteers, usually young people, sometimes older brothers and sisters, to do small group classes. And I think that, even in the non-COVID times, we have always leaned on community members. We found that during the COVID time, actually, they were even more helpful, more engaged, because I think the support from families as well as from the communities was higher because everybody knew that that is the only way in which we can move forward. So if I show you the next slide, it will give you some sense that, this we all know that in our tribal areas or non-tribal areas, there is quite a big difference in the availability of phones. And we relied largely on just normal phones so that we could put up a two-way communication. Every week, every one of our families, every day they got a message, a small SMS message. Every week they got phone calls from people that they knew. First to find out how you were doing, how is everybody in the family, and then next to talk about the activity that had been sent. And I would say that the activities we were sending were largely for engagement, for involving the families, because we have, as we know, a lot of families who may not be particularly educated, but are keen to help their children. So for us as Pratham, this entire period of last year was a very, very important learning time. And I call it a period of reaching at the right level. We had been teaching at the right level, but I think we were learning, because every SMS message that you sent, we got so much feedback from family members, from parents, about what activities, they enjoyed doing together and what was different. So we were able to really change our content, change our message, change our activities by learning from what families were telling us. Next slide will give you a little bit of a view that when we were able to run these small mohalla classes or hamlet-wise volunteer programs, we actually saw quite a lot of progress. And we are going to do it again in August and September. 1 month, 4-week, short modules, mainly aimed on catch-up. And you can see that although there is a difference between the tribal and the non-tribal areas levels to begin with, progress is substantial everywhere. And in fact, I would say the progress often we see that our progress in the tribal areas is higher. I attribute that to more engagement, more enthusiasm, and more energy in many cases. These are all just to tell you that I think the government of Odisha is really moving down a path that we believe is very productive. Community members, volunteers can play a major role. We have seen good progress, and the more support we can give them through phone, through talking continuously, when movement is not possible, then the phone is the only way. We have not depended much on Zoom or on online. We have depended in the old-fashioned way of how you talk to your own family members. You pick up the phone and you talk to them and talk frequently. Sometimes we are able to have a couple of people on a phone conference. And that's how we have been able to actually see that learning can be held and can be pushed. I think that we just need to believe that our volunteers and our parents can play a major role. And that's what we can see here. Now, very quickly moving ahead to the next slide. We have the other program I want to quickly talk to you about. This is a program that is, we are very proud of it. This is targeted at, normally it is targeted at girls and young women who for one reason or the other could not get up to 10th. And we all know that finishing the 10th standard exam actually opens doors to many things. And for this program, we work in 3 districts in Odisha, and I've put down the names of the districts and the blocks. And the way we work, if you go to the next slide, it's a year-long program, because to get such girls back into the mainstream takes some time. They have to do the 10th class exam. So in a block, we have 5 locations and about 25 to 30 girls in each location. This is before COVID, the model that we work. There's a tutor, and there is a different faculty that we move through each of these 5 locations through the year. Overall, in each of these blocks, we've had 100 or 120. And you can see that the process we use is, first the girls and women are mobilized. Then we have 2 parts to our course, a foundation course and a main course. Then there is an exam preparation. They register for the exam, they take the exam, and they pass the exam. And for the last 3 years, I've put down some of the pass percentages. And you can see that they have both varied across the districts and also varied over time. And for us, again, the measurement is very important because it helps you to improve when you see where you are weak. Then came COVID. This is also a completely face-to-face, intensive, hand-holding program to help the girls to finish 10th. And many of them have not been in school for several years. So they have to get back into the mainstream. So let me show you what we did during the pandemic when face-to-face was very difficult to do. Next slide. Go to the next slide. We basically changed a few features. So if you can't move face-to-face, luckily for us, the mobilization had started already just before the lockdown happened. So we did exactly the same thing as I described from our primary programs, that you quickly connected by phone as much as you could, but we had groups of older girls together. So as you saw on the first picture, it was possible when movement was a little possible for these girls, 4 or 5 girls to get together. We connect on the phone, we send them as many things as possible. And I'm very proud to say that though this was completely new for us, all our materials were on paper, all our teaching was face-to-face, but our teams really moved themselves to how do you become remote. And again, on the right-hand side, you'll see, in fact, we've been able to hold on to our girls almost better in the COVID year than in the previous years. The number of girls who are still with us waiting for the exam, which I think will happen later on in July. And we are, of course, anxiously waiting to see whether we pass or not. It's not our girls passing, it is us passing. This is a program that Unicef is also supporting this year. And I think that apart from the support to these girls to pass, we have engaged a lot of the alumni to do some of the volunteer work with the children. So I think there is and I'll talk about it a little later, we believe that if you are benefiting from education, there is something that you can do for the people in your community. So it is not money, but it is really engagement. And we call it Shiksha ke badle Shiksha, or education for education. So just to start wrapping up, if we go to the next slide, that, things have been very difficult, and yet we see so much enterprise. We see that even in your department, this reaching out. I mean, I'm so happy to hear, because your belief is like ours, that it is the person-to-person contact that will really take us through. Digital means will be a support, a strong support, but very often in both the examples that I've shown you, particularly in the areas in which there was low connectivity, low devices, low education, I think it's the strength of people wanting to help each other that has taken us forward. So a couple of quick thoughts on our learnings, if we go ahead. One is that I think as the new school year, usually we have summer holidays, and by July, children are expecting the new thing to begin. So we see two major challenges, and even more so in tribal areas. For the younger children, we see that you need a school readiness. Children who are enrolled today in standard 2 have actually never been to school. And they have likely never been to Anganwadi either, because the last 2 years have been very difficult. So clearly we cannot give them standard 2 curriculum when they come to school or when we prepare them. We have to do what I think Odisha knows very well how to do, is how do you take the Anganwadi kind of approach, 4 or 5 broad domains, and help our children go through some of those activities, and mothers can help in that. For the primary and upper primary grades, and again, I think that you have already mentioned in your alternate learning and mentorship programs that you have created modules, and we believe the same, that a big catch-up campaign is needed. Now, very interestingly, just before this second surge hit, we were in conversation, Pratham, BGVS, I see some BGVS people on this webinar also, and the education department, to do this big campaign, which they were calling the Mo School Abhiyan, where alumni of the schools would actually act as volunteers. And my request would be to the Odisha government that it was a very, very, I think, interesting program about alumni helping. And I would say that this is the right time as we move into the post-summer vacation kind of time to really revive the Mo School Abhiyan, and really appeal to alumni of primary and secondary schools across Odisha to give the next 1 or 2 months in a very organized fashion to help our children both have school readiness and to help catch up. Once we have these readiness and catch up goals in mind, I think we should not be waiting for schools to open. How do we connect to home and how do you connect to school? I think you already have a very excellent example of teachers reaching out to communities, and I think we need to build on that. In the next slide, I'm just laying out the different kinds of contexts that we need to be ready for. We know that the contexts are going to be very varied. They are going to change with very short notice. As Mr. Pradeep said, another wave may hit us at any time. So we need adequate preparation to know that readiness or catch up, we are going to do this under any circumstances. If you go to the next slide, I think probably it's my last slide, that we need to set our goals for the next quarter, move quarter by quarter. In Pratham, we are thinking of these 3 possible scenarios. One is a total lockdown, we cannot do anything. On the home connect, all you can do is you can phone and speak, but do it continuously, go it in a systematic manner, and start talking about learning issues. The second scenario where local movement is possible, schools are still closed, but local movement is possible. And therefore, I think the volunteer ideas, the teacher, the mentor, your academic support and academic learning and mentorship kinds of things can be done. I also have this personal belief that all schools should open the doors, not just their doors, but the doors of their cupboards for their libraries, and invite family members to borrow books so that at least whatever is in the school can flow into the village. Learning materials there are, or on Anganwadis. last slide, and I hope I have not taken too much time, that I think that I am supporting strongly, as Pratham, we are supporting strongly that volunteers can play a major role. In our own programs, we are going to do this education for education, that if you are a volunteer, you give time for younger children in the village, what can we do for you? And what we are going to do for you, you can remove the slide, I'm done, I'm just finishing up. What we can do for you that we are thinking about is to give a short digital readiness course on a WhatsApp to every volunteer that joins, so that if you give 1 month for catch up or school readiness to the small children in your village, you get and I think Ranjana ji, you spoke about an investment that we need to do in digital infrastructure. I think that has devices and that has capability. And we need to now make our communities, young people, as well as parents, more digitally adept with whatever technology they have. A second idea I want to leave with you is that we have, and again, I think I'm going back to what Ranjana ji said, we have about 1,000 villages in different parts of India where we have used tablets with offline content, which children use, children's groups use. So it is distributed in the village. Children choose what they want to do. They can get some help from their mentors, but we find that over a period of 4-5 years, very little theft, very little damage. Children are very responsible with anything that is given to them, and parents are very supportive of such things. 2 last points. You have a large number of hostels. Obviously, hostels can't open now, but when they do, I think your children, because of being in a residential setting, can move much faster than children who are in non-residential. So we would be very happy to support with any way we can, but how do we do this catch up fast and accelerated in your residential programs once children are back? And finally, I would say, and again, I know there are a lot of senior officers on this, and I'm not as well versed with rules of Narega and so on, but I can't understand why in this crisis period, our Manrega programs cannot allow community volunteers as a Narega activity, at least for the remainder of this school year. Because I think that would provide some livelihood, some structure, some incentive to young community volunteers who would be willing to come forward and do this. I think it should be something to be considered. And I would really, really encourage Government of Odisha to start the Mo School Abhiyan, because then you can lead the way for many other states to use their alumni in this overall education for education kind of campaign. So thank you from my side, and I look forward to hearing from the others.
Thank you, Rukmini, for your nice presentation. In fact, Pratham is doing a wonderful job. I know, particularly during your model fits in very much to the COVID situation. You know, as if you knew what problems will come up and a COVID situation will come. Your model very much fits in. I think we will be discussing more on this, and we'll be sharing more experiences from you at our level, and few things we'll definitely take forward. But I must tell you here that department is thinking, and in fact has decided and is working towards the community volunteers. And many other things that you have said will definitely take into consideration. And when we are giving the recommendation to government on the basis of the presentations that you people will be making, I think we'll put a number of things that you have put, which seems to us as very practical and effective. Thank you so much. And you see, at the end of the 3 presentations, I think we will take very selected 4 or 5 questions for the panelists to respond. I wish the panelists should continue to stay till that time. Thank you.
We will move ahead to the next presentation that is on the mother tongue based education by Professor Ajit Mohanty. And let me just introduce Professor Ajit Mohanty, sir.
Yeah.
Professor Ajit Mohanty is an educational psycholinguist working on multilingual education, language policy in education, and education of indigenous, tribal, and minority communities. He was an ICSSR National Fellow after his retirement in 2011 as Professor of Psychology and former chairperson in the Center of Educational Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. He taught in different universities for around more than 42 years, including 28 years as a professor. He has over 180 publications in different national and international journals and has book chapters and 8 books in the areas of multilingualism, poverty, and indigenous psychology. Promotion of education in mother tongue has been Professor Mohanty's lifetime ideology, research effort, and ambition. So I would request Professor we go ahead with this presentation. And before Sir proceeds, I would ask the participants to kindly put your questions in the chat box so that we can take up the questions, the selective questions at the end of the session. So, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ota and the team of organizers. It's quite gratifying to be able to share the dais, in a way, virtual dais with Rukminiji and Professor Senapati. We all began the inaugural session by underscoring the divides between children and their learning, the digital divide, the communication divide, and also the language divide in particular. But what is actually striking aspect of Rukminiji's presentation is that there are two ways of dealing with children's learning issues. One is to just find out what is the level of their learning and find out who passed and who failed. Rukminiji pointed out one thing, that if it's not that children pass, it's we who pass. Or if children fail, we also fail. I think that is the basic approach that is needed at all levels. We cannot stop by just assuming that children cannot learn, or some children at least cannot learn. If one child is not learning, there is something wrong with us. Something. If a child cannot learn, it's because not because the child cannot learn, it's because we cannot teach. And therefore, I think there is the entire exercise of educating children at the elementary and then, of course, secondary level is an exercise of problem solving. Again, going back to Rukminiji's approach, they tried to locate what exactly is the problem and try to deal with that. That I think is the kind of approach that we need to underscore for ourselves in all our efforts. And in this presentation, I will primarily talk about language as an issue in children's learning. And again, going back to the previous presentation, it was repeatedly pointed out that one of the basic problem is learning, and then to go next to the level is the reading issue. This is very fundamental skills. Let us that repeatedly it has been said that elementary or primary education is primarily about language. If the child understands the teacher, if the child understands the textbook, I think that's it. It's not math or science or everything. They're all interrelated at one level. That is, that there is an underlying problem issue of comprehension, which goes back to language. If child cannot understand, then there is no access. Access is not just having a physical school close to a child. Access is a psychological process where if a child is not able to understand the teacher, understand the textbook, understand the classroom context, then there is no access, psychologically. So we need to understand that kind of basic process. So first thing that I wanted to point out is that primary education is mostly about education in language. That is important. And therefore, if someone said language is not everything in education, that is true. But without language, everything in education is nothing in education. Nothing is there for the child. So we need to realize that. And second thing I would like to point out is that you don't teach language to a child, particularly if you are focused on mother tongue, then child is not to be taught a language. Children acquire, develop that language. And all we can hope to do, and that's what the parents, usually family members, do, they facilitate that learning of the child, learning of the acquiring of the language. And I think more or less the formal classroom context, the teacher and the teaching process can actually take it on from there. Not using a classroom space to teach a language, but engage the child in language-based activities, and children will learn. So that is something that we need to point out, we need to understand. And we also should know that whether or not a child goes through a formal process of education, every child learning a language has a lot of insight about the language. It's not that we give the insight to the child. Children, even before coming to school, the preschool years, they correct themselves. How does a child correct herself in speaking? We have heard it so many times. It's not that parents always correct a child. No. In fact, studies show that parents do not correct for correct language or grammar and all that. Parents usually focus their attention on pragmatic correctness. If something is practically right, the information is practically right, they will accept it. So in spite of all that, in spite of the fact that the kind of language that the child hears, mother tongue at least, is not always perfect. It's not a textbook language. It's not always a grammatically complete sentence that the child hears. But on the basis of all that exposure, the child is able to get to a point where she knows what kind of expression is right, what kind of expression is not right. She knows when she says something, if it is wrong, she would come back and correct herself. She would repeat and correct herself. So that itself, there's a lot of evidence. I don't want to go into the technicalities of it. The point that I'm trying to make is children have a basic propensity, basic capacity to acquire language and to think about language. See, there are two aspects of a language use as far as formal classroom learning is concerned. One is using language as a vehicle of your thought, using language to communicate, the usual process to understand, to make oneself understood. That's what children do, and all children, by the time they come to formal school, they all have the basic social communication skill, which is minimum, the minimum aspect of a language. They know what is right and wrong. And not only that, in Indian condition, children have also exposure to multilingual communication skills almost everywhere. You don't find a community which is absolutely monolingual community or a context. So children actually, as they grow out of their, we have done a lot of studies on how children are socialized for multilingualism in our context, in Indian context, studies from all over India what it shows that children have the basic social communicative skills, not only in the language of their family or home language or what is often called mother tongue, but they also have that capacity to sort of absorb all other languages that are used as the child's sphere of activity or zone of communication actually goes on extending. The child goes out of the family into the immediate neighborhood, into the marketplace, into the wider zones of communication. And as the child does that, the child also acquires some basic multilingual communication skill. Child may not acquire competence in second or third or other languages as much as the child does in the mother tongue, but at least there is a facility of being able to manage in a context where multiple languages are used. Unfortunately, our schools very often, particularly tribal children, that is the focus of discussion here. Most of our tribal children do not have the opportunity for their mother tongue education in their mother tongue, and their schools do not really emphasize the multilingual kind of skills that children usually come to school with. So you have a kind of a gap, language gap, that or language barrier that the child faces once the child goes to the school. Her language, which has been the basis of her acquisition of knowledge or of her understanding of the flora and fauna around, or understanding of the culture, understanding of the dynamics of the society, and all that, everything that the child knows is already embedded in the child's mind in a system of codification which is based primarily on the mother tongue skills, somewhat also on multilingual skills, but mostly on the mother tongue skill. So therefore, it's not, you don't teach, let us face the fact. If a teacher believes that the C is the one who teaches a child to add or subtract, I think she is wrong. Because much before children come to school, they know what is adding, what is subtracting. Perhaps they are not using the formal mathematical symbol or mathematical language, but they know the operation. They know about the operation of adding, subtracting, dividing. The mother always does that, distributing something equally to all the children or putting things together. That's all part of the common daily life experience of a child who grows up in a cultural context. Therefore, it's wrong to believe that these so-called scientific concepts, so-called classroom concepts, whether it is mathematics or environmental science or any other concept, the concepts actually do not begin in classroom. The concepts are already there in the mind of the child, and therefore it's for the teacher or for the teaching process to relate whatever is there in the mind of the child and relate the classroom concept to the child's own experience.
Professor Mahanti, this is Ota. Can you please conclude in next 2-3 minutes time?
Okay. Yeah, I think I wish you had said that earlier. Anyway, thank you.
Sir, I know. Sir.
Yeah. So that's fine. So the question is, what do you need to go through this process? Particularly the pandemic context. What do you need? Again, you see, it's not teaching a child; it's creating the conditions, and that is what has been repeatedly said. Actually, Rukminiji's presentation repeatedly said. Then how do you get around that kind of context? Digital divide. How do you circumvent the digital divide? So I will just, as a last point, since already Dr. Ota has told me to finish early, I will just give you one example. We had, some of you may know that the Odisha government, the OPEPA, has a multilingual education program, and also some of you may not know that Odisha is the only state which has a policy of mother tongue based education for tribal children. Policy which was notified by the government of Odisha in the Gazette in 2014. So that policy actually, itself indicates what is happening. What are the alternative modes of education being tried through the multilingual education mode. But when the multilingual education program started in the government of Odisha around 2007, we took up a program along with the government of Odisha MLE school, what we call the MLE Plus program. In MLE Plus program, one of the things that we experimented with is the community-based learning, which something that again was presented severally in the earlier presentation. Community-based, we defined literacy not as a classroom context, not as a classroom-based skill. Literacy is a skill which extends into the community, into the home and the community, number one. Number two is the bulk of the teaching of literacy is not confined to reading and writing, but it starts from the oral. So that continuity between orality and literacy has to be accepted. So what we did in our MLE Plus project, which was run in 8 schools, 8 of the government schools, primary schools in Pulwani and Gajpati districts, Saura and Kui speaking children. What we did is we took the entire literacy activity to the classroom, into the community, where the community elders, children, and they started telling stories to each other. We have books which were produced on the basis of the stories told by the community elders and so on. And there are several other activities. I will not go into the detailed description of it, but it's all written there, written and discussed in different publications. One of the things we called it a synergistic reading program, meaning that in a reading development in the mother tongue, it's not a classroom activity, but it's an activity which extends into the community through the interaction between the children and the adults. Therefore, I think the kind of model, if you are looking at alternate models, it's the idea of connecting with the community. If the pandemic and the great divide, digital and other divides are there, the idea should be how to reach out to the family, to the parents and to the community. And as Rukminiji very aptly pointed out several examples of how to connect through maybe cell phone or a mobile phone or other connectivity methods, or just reaching out through volunteers, through the teachers and others in the community, reaching out to the family and to the child, so that they can facilitate each other's learning in the mother tongue. Because all that is needed is a lot of activities conducted in the mother tongue, and children will learn of their own. You don't have to teach a child as such. Just provide the kind of experience that the child ought to have, and that should be enough. So as long as the basic mother tongue kind of emphasis is there, and Professor Senapati will come next to talk about the 2020 National Education Policy, which also talks about not only mother tongue education, but also mother tongue linked with the multilinguality or multilingualism as a cognitive asset. Therefore, what we need is children's mother tongue. What we need is to alternatively reach out to the community and to the family and give them the enough support, training as well as support, to be able to engage with the child. I think I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. With your lot of experience of working in MLE, I think you are a reference point. So whatever you will say is definitely something on MLE that will be very useful, particularly during the COVID situation, to continue the education in an effective manner, particularly with the tribal children, using the tribal language as the medium. I think we are trying that way, and we'll also take more cue from your expertise and take it forward. Now that the MHRD minister is somebody, and you have the key of MLE with you, I think we'll try to impress upon him and see how nationally this kind of approach can be adopted, giving more thrust on multilingual education for the tribal children. Of course, new education policy 2020 promises is concerned, but how to take it forward is something that probably we are going to learn from Professor Senapati. And I would request Professor to kindly just highlight all those things that are there in 2002 NEP, which you people have drafted, pertaining to tribal children, education of tribal children. I think without spending any more time, I would request Professor Senapati to kindly give his presentation in brief, only highlighting the education of tribal children, what 2020 promises. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think this is a good opportunity for me to disseminate my idea about NEP 2020 in the context of the tribal children of Odisha. We all know that policy was released in last July, 29 July, and now we are going to complete almost 1 year. And before this policy, we know we had 2 more policy. And after independence, we had 3 commissions: University Education Commission, then Mudaliar Commission, Secondary Education Commission, then Indian Education Commission, Kotari Education Commission, 64, 66. Then we had the first policy in the year 1968. Then second policy in the year 86, and this is the third policy. And to implement the policy, we normally develop curriculum framework. And you'll be happy to know that NCERT has developed 4 national curriculum framework from the beginning, in 75, in 88, in 2000, and 2005. And now, after this policy, we are going to develop 4 national curriculum framework to implement this policy, because 1 on school education, as usual, then 1 on teacher education, but 2 more national curriculum framework, 1 on early childhood education and care, and 1 on adult education. That means we are going to put a lot of emphasis on early childhood education and care. And so far the structure is concerned, now we have come out with 5+3+3+4 structure. But before the structure, if you see the vision of the policy, because I know time is very short, and I'll be very brief. Vision of the policy, that means we are going to put a lot of emphasis on Indian ethos. We want our children should be connected to their root. In this context, tribal children should also be connected to their roots. That is most important, that they should know they should learn through their language, they should know their culture, they should know their tradition. So that is most important. And we are going to create a very inclusive, vibrant knowledge society. And that will be possible if we can take care of all the children, including the tribal children, who are coming from remote area, coming from very difficult area, and we are unable to reach them. And if we can provide them education, right type of education, definitely we can make a very equitable, vibrant knowledge society. That is the expectation of the policy. Then this policy has put a lot of emphasis on fundamental duties, not only on fundamental rights, more on fundamental duties and constitutional values and obligations. That is more important, because we have to take care of affective domain. It is not only the cognitive domain that is going to solve all the problem. It is affective domain. It is emotional intelligence that is going to play a very important role. That is why now we have to take care of this duties part. What is our duty? What is our responsibility? We should not fight all the time for our rights. We should also be conscious of our duties, and our children should know what is their duties and what is their responsibilities. And the fourth thing, that if you see the vision, That policy expect that we should not limit our children only to the India or Indian value system, and they should also know what is happening around the world. And policy is also talking about the global citizenship education, and we are going to prepare not only a good citizen for our country, not only good human being, but also global citizen, so that we can take care of our Indian philosophy, ancient philosophy, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So that is the vision of this policy. And so far as the fundamental principles are concerned, that what policy emphasizes? Policy emphasizes we have to identify, we have to recognize, and we have to foster the capacities of each and every child. That is the most important thing, the potential, creative potential of each and every child. It may be that the child may be from the tribal area, maybe from the rural, maybe from the urban. Everybody should get facility to to develop his or her potentialities, that creative potential. That is most important. So that is the most important thing. Then it is going to be very flexible, that we know, because students will select subjects as per their choice, and no hard separation. That also we know, no hard separation between curricular, co-curricular, extracurricular, and this cognitive, non-cognitive, and the academic, non-academic, vocational, academic. So all this, that means we want holistic individual, and we want holistic education. So that is most important thing that policy is going to highlight. And I'm very happy that Professor Mohanty has already highlighted that part, and Madam Rukmini Banerjee also highlighted something relating to the practices during this COVID period. And because when we are talking about this policy, that we are talking about multilingualism. That is most important, because what problem we are facing, not only in Odisha, all over the country, particularly our tribal children. Their mother tongue is different, but we are providing them textbook in the state language and regional language. And when we are developing the textbook, we are developing textbook keeping in view the national framework. And of course, framework will be there, no doubt. But that local context is neglected. But this policy has taken care of that. That means we are going to put a lot of emphasis on local flavor. We are going to add local flavor to our textbook. If we can add local flavor to our textbooks, then definitely our textbooks will be interesting, and our children will be connected to their root, because we are talking about that education should be contextual. And when we can make it contextual, if we can include local history, local geography, local culture in our textbook. That is the most important thing that our policy has recommended, particularly for the child. We are teaching them in different language. We are compelling them to learn through the other language, because materials are not available. Of course, in Odisha, a lot of work has been done. That is different. But I mean, tribal area, most of the area of the states of the country, that children are facing these difficulties. And if we can contextualize our education, if we can really help them to know about their culture and tradition, their value system, then definitely they will be happy. And what type of educational institution we want? We expect that the institutions should be very conducive, and that they should feel welcomed. And that the institution should take care of them. Then they should feel at home. And we should get a very conducive learning environment, so that they will not feel leaving the school. So that type of environment we have to create, and we have to take care of their language, we have to take care of their culture, tradition, everything. If we can do that, definitely we are going to provide the right type of education to our children. And when we talk of the policy, in the policy, that means if it's into 4 stages. One most important, that is the foundational stage, that we all know 85% of the brain development takes place during this period. And why we're talking? Because we know the scenario. And in this 3 years of preschool and class 1, 2 will be integrated. It will be one stage, that is the foundational stage. And during this stage, we have to take care of our children, because we know 85% brain development takes place during this period. And when we think of the tribal children, when we see the condition of our Anganwadis and Anganwadi workers, and we are taking care of that food and nutrition part, we are not taking care of that education part. And we have to provide them right, it has been mentioned in the policy, we have to provide them right type of training to the Anganwadi workers. And also, if required, we may appoint teachers And so we should take care of not only the food and nutrition aspect, and we should take care of the education aspect. That is why in policy it has been recommended there should be proper integration between education, tribal welfare, women and child development, and family and health. So all these four departments should work together so that we can come out with a good model, and that can be implemented in the field, and we can really bring about change in the system. That, and we have already come out with one curriculum, 3 years curriculum for preschool before the policy. But now policy has recommended that foundation stage 5 years, and it is going to be integrated. And what policy has recommended? Policy has recommended keeping in view the developmental characteristics of the learner. So that from that point of view, it is very effective. And just I would like to, because time is very short, I would like to highlight 3 things. What policy has recommended? Policy has recommended reform in curriculum. Policy has recommended reform in pedagogy. Policy has recommended reform in assessment. Because when we are talking about the curriculum, that curriculum, we are going to introduce competency-based curriculum, outcome-based curriculum, and content load is going to be less. And you see the education what we're providing, and we're promoting rote learning, and we're preparing for exam. But we want our children to develop their basic skills and competencies. And to develop the skills and competency, we have to reduce the content, and we have to make it competency based. And keeping in view the skills and competency, we should select the content. That is number 1. And we are going to introduce a good number of new subjects. And it may be that it has been mentioned in the policy that we all know that we are going to introduce, putting a lot of emphasis on artificial intelligence and even holistic health and organic living, because this holistic organic living, that is most important so far the tribal the children are concerned, and even environmental education. And other aspect also, that coding, other things we are going to take care of. So that means we are going to make our curriculum more flexible. And we are going to introduce vocational education from class 6 onwards. And when we are going, the children will go to secondary stage, they will get opportunity to select subject of their choice, and there will be no hard separation between the science, art, and other things. So they will, and new subjects will be introduced. So a lot of flexibility in the policy. So far as the curriculum is concerned, we are going to make it more relevant. We are going to prepare textbook, keeping in view the local needs, local requirement, adding local flavor. But so far the pedagogy, when we are talking about the pedagogy, in pedagogy, if you see the what has been recommended, experiential learning, and our children should learn through experience. And it has been recommended art integrated learning, sports integrated learning, even ICT integrated learning, storytelling based pedagogy. And our children will come to the school without school bag, so that and they will get exposure to variety of experiences. Even our National Curriculum Framework 2005 has also recommended that there should be proper link between what is happening inside the school classroom and what is happening outside the classroom. And if you see the example of the tribal classroom, that means our textbook is something different, and the content we are teaching to our children that may not be relevant to the tribal children, and what is happening outside the society, that there may be gap. Now we have to establish that link and minimize that gap. And we have to make it more art integrated, more sport integrated. We have to, because we are promoting holistic development. And similarly, when we are going to for this assessment, that is the most important, because unless we bring about change in the process of assessment, nothing will happen. Because assessment is an integral part of teaching learning. Earlier, our impression was that assessment is something isolated, something separate from teaching learning. And we are using that assessment of learning, assessment for learning. We all are familiar with this. Assessment of learning means it is at the end what we assess, just to know to what extent we have been successful in achieving our objectives. Similarly, assessment for learning we conduct in between, just to give the feedback, just to provide remedial measures so that they can acquire mastery over the content what has been prescribed. But now we are talking about assessment as learning. We are putting a lot of emphasis on 360-degree assessment, holistic assessment. Assessment is going to be transparent, and students are going to be involved in the process of assessment. That is the most important recommendation. And when we are going to involve students in the process of assessment, that means there will be peer assessment, there will be self-assessment, and there will be assessment by the teacher, and there will be not only individual assessment, that there will be group assessment. And that means we can assess their work through the project, through the assignment, and what they are doing in the group, and not only what they are learning, but how they are learning. That is most important. And if we will not assess that, then people will not take care of that. So that is why how they are learning, that is most important. That means how they're participating, sharing, because we all know in theory that if there is more social interaction, then there is better learning. And to enhance learning, we have to encourage our children to participate, to share, to exhibit their talent, to create something, and to share their experiences, so that actually classroom will be very vibrant. And when student will get opportunity to assess their performance, they will know their strength as well as their weakness. When they will know the criteria, they will prepare accordingly. We are going to involve students. So when we are going to prepare rubrics, and we are now going to prepare holistic report card. That is most important recommendation. Because till now, what we are doing, we are building in deficit model. What our students do not know, what our children do not know. If child is poor in mathematics, we label this, he or she is dull, then we don't take care of other aspects. And now many times now, what problem we are facing, we in the Pratham also conduct a study, we have also conducted a study. So suppose class 6 child is unable to read the text of class 2, what does it mean? That means there is something wrong. Even the survey conducted by NCRT, when our children going to higher class from class 3 to class 5, their learning level is decreasing. If in class 3 it is 60%, then when they're going to class 5, it is 50%. In class 8, still is decreasing. So there is something wrong, because we have to take care of this. We have to develop the skills and competency, and for that we have to integrate assessment as learning. That means student will get opportunity to reflect on their own learning. It may be tribal students, it may be non-tribal students, but so far as the pedagogy is concerned, we have to take care of it, and we have to be very specific, very careful about the tribal children, what policy has recommended. Even the people-teacher ratio, 1:3, 30 for the other children, but for the children who are coming from the tribal area, it is 1:25. That means we have to take special care of these children, so that we can really provide them a very conducive learning environment, and they can participate, they will share their experiences, and they will learn from their environment, rich environment. It is not that we should not undermine that they are coming from the tribal area. Their environment is very rich, and if we can really connect their class to the outside environment, then it will be very meaningful, very effective. And by doing that, we can really attract our children, and but through art integrated learning, through sport integrated learning, even where if possible, we can integrate ICT also, and storytelling based pedagogy. We all know that we all are familiar with that, and our children fond of listening stories. We are also fond of listening stories. So all these we can do to improve the quality of education in our tribal area. And the recommendation, that is something general, but for the particularly we have to be very specific for our tribal children. That is why I would like to mention that on 5th July, that literacy mission, the National Mission for Literacy and Numeracy has been launched by our Honorable Education Minister, because that is the most, because our focus is on literacy and numeracy. If we cannot strengthen this foundational literacy and numeracy, then it will be very difficult for us to provide right type of education, and the children will not continue. They will leave. That why class 6 children are unable to read the text of class 2 or solve the problem of class 2, because they have not developed the required basic skills and competencies. So when they will be in class 3, that means by the end of class 3, and they will be able to acquire the basic skills and competency what is required, that has been recommended. And for that, this mission for literacy numeracy mission has been set up, and they have also recommended the 5-tier mechanism, how to implement national level, state level, district level, block level, and school level. So that means there will be proper monitoring, there will be sharing and proper coordination, so that we can really help our children to develop their basic skills and competency. That is the need of hour. So I think I have given the brief idea about the policy, and I don't want to take much time, because time is going to be over. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and this is a good opportunity to share my experience with. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sanapati. It is nice to see you after 6 years. When I was director at CRT, I think we had last met before you joined the chairman.
Yes.
So very well said, and
Thank
I'm
you,
happy that you have drafted 2020, new education policy as you were in the team. Good experience, and I think whatever you said is very enlightening for everybody. There are lot of things which have been incorporated in 2002 NEP to promote or to use MLE as a tool, to do classroom transaction and to make the child comfortable, and in a slow transition, how transitioning will happen, so that there will be seamless learning over a period of time. First 5 classes you have put that emphasis should be given on tribal language. Is very good. I must congratulate you for thinking from this perspective along with Professor Mahanti. There are a number of questions which most of the panelists, particularly it was directed to responded. And if there is any question which will remain still in the chat box, we will get back to the respective panelists to please answer that, because we have to come up with a kind of proceeding. I would like to just brief in 3 to 4 minutes the 3 presentations which are made. I must tell you, the presentation, each presentation is unique in its own way. But so far as Pratham's presentation is concerned, Rukmini presentation, it really appealed me because we are trying that model. We have gone through the first ALMP stage, Now we are into ALMP 2. What is most important, which both, Professor Senapati, Professor Mahanti, and you also indicated, that when the school reopens, and even if it reopens late, if you just see today, you will find a class 4 student at class 2 stage. So what do? We are preparing a school readiness kind of a package. And that school readiness package will be used by the community volunteers, many of whom will be, many of whom are alumni. And also our teachers will be, together, and it will be done as a community mode method. And this school readiness book, which you are preparing, will be used for the tribal children under the mentorship of about, maybe 20,000 or 25,000 volunteers. We will be going in this direction. And coming back to, Professor Mahanti and Professor Senapati's presentation, I must tell you, we have done now bilingual dictionary in 21 languages. And in all the 21 tribal languages in the state of Odisha, we have done, trilingual proficiency module, which we are also giving to the cutting edge, persons who are working, as you mentioned, Anganwadi worker, the ASA Didi, and, all the persons who are working right at the ground level, so that they can be acquainted with the local language a little bit, and they will communicate to the tribal people. And I think that is how the language will survive, because language is the identity of, a culture. And, language is dying very fast amongst the tribal communities, you know it pretty well. So this is a modest attempt. And so far as tribal language is concerned, Sir told, Government of Odisha in USEPA has prepared 290 books, which are nothing but, modules from class 1 to class 5, which is getting printed, and it will be circulated amongst all children. And it is designed in such a manner that language will be used as the, as the means for transacting in the classroom, so that the child feels at home and the learning becomes faster. But the most important thing is that right at the moment, nobody knows how long the COVID situation will continue and how many more months the children will stay back home. Under this situation, what kind of a package we should effectively use? What should be that means by which we can reach out to the tribal children in a better manner, so that the transaction can take place and learning becomes more effective is the challenge for which we are organizing this 2-day webinar. I am sure your input will go a long way in preparing a roadmap for our alternate learning and mentoring program, phase 2, involving the community. I must thank each one of you, sir, and I would request if you can kindly contribute, a 8 to 10 page, article. We will come up with a publication which will probably be very, very useful, not only for us, because when we are organizing this webinar, we are organizing this on behalf of Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which will have implication for 26 states and union territories. I think we'll pull it together and we'll also try to come up with a roadmap. Maybe we do a small working group to prepare the roadmap, but then we want, a synoptic note on each one of your presentations. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot to Rukmini. Thanks a lot to Professor Mahanti, who is my teacher like, and thanks a lot to Professor Senapati, who has been a good friend and a great contributor, to tribal education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for wrapping up this session, and thank you all the presenters for their very nice and articulate presentations. Now we can immediately move on to the next session, that is the technical session 2 of the day.
Madam,
The technical session 2 is on alternative approaches for continuity of learning, community-based or system-based approaches and access to learning. So in this session, we have 3-4 presentations, and this is equally important session, as important as the first, because we have here sharing of experiences not only from the states of Odisha and Chhattisgarh in India, but also we have country teams from Bhutan and Maldives also joining us, and we are very eager to look forward to their presentations and experiences on alternate learning practices. So here, as we start the second technical session, I would like to invite and welcome Professor H.K. Mohanty, sir, to chair the session, and this session would be co-chaired by Madam Lalita Patnaik, who is the education specialist of Unicef Odisha. So before we start, let me take this privilege to actually introduce Professor Hrishikesh Senapati. Professor Senapati was the former director of NCERT, New Delhi, India, and prior to this position, he was heading the Regional Institute of Education, RIE Bhopal, as its principal, and he has also worked with the Regional Institute of Education in Bhubaneswar as well. His area of specializations are teacher education and information and communication technology in education, and he has more than 30 years of experience in teaching, training, research and extension activities. In addition to many areas concerning school education, he has also worked on integration of ICT into constructivist theory of learning to bring a paradigm shift in the teacher education practices. So I once again welcome you. And I also take this opportunity to introduce the co-chair, Madam Lalita Patnaik, and she is here. Madam Patnaik is the educational specialist of Unicef Odisha, and she has more than 30 years of experience of working with Unicef. She is holding the position of education specialist Unicef Odisha. Her understanding of education for children and insights into how children learn in diverse contexts has significantly contributed to the crafting of policies and programs for education development of children. Firmly rooted to the deep-seated grassroots level realities, Madam Patnaik is committed to the cause of children and their development. Her contributions to the social sector development have really been impressive. Madam, I again welcome you and request you to kindly co-chair the session.
Thank you.
Professor H.K. Senapati, sir, as the chair, sir, I again request you, the floor is yours, sir, to take it forward. The first presentation.
Okay, thank you, madam.
Sir,
Thank you very.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your kind words. This is a great opportunity to preside over a session, and I'm very happy Madam Patnaik is the co-chair. Just I will take 2 minutes, just because this is something very close to my heart. This alternative approach for continuity of learning, because I remember in last year when this pandemic started in NCRT, that request came from PMO that we have to do something immediately. And in the month of April, just I would like to mention that we came out with alternative academic calendar, because we have developed learning outcome from class 1 to 10. Initially, we developed to 8, then 9, 10 we developed. And keeping in view the learning outcomes, we map the content, because we have different portals. We have ePathshala, we have NROER, and we have Diksha, and also some other portals are available. And keeping in view the learning outcome and the materials what is available in the portal, we came out with this alternative calendar, and where we we developed the guideline for the teachers. Teacher will guide the parents with the help of their mobile or smartphone. Even smartphone is not there, they can use simple phone. So the parents will conduct very conducive learning environment inside the home using available resources. So that, and not only that, they will encourage children to concentrate on their study, and we also recommended that children also do some yoga, some other physical activities, and they should play. And parents should use this storytelling approach, and since they are at home in the mental health, and now that SOHO program is also continuing in NCRT, and we took care of the holistic development. And after that, what problem we faced, that we received complaint that now the classes are going on through this online mode, just like face-to-face mode. So that again we faced some that we came up with another guideline how to use this online program, and we reduce the duration. It is not that just we'll go on presenting and student will go on listening. Then another problem came, the third one, that we came out with the learning enhancement model, because the students who are not having anything, no mobile, nothing, then using that through community, through school, how can we reach the children through volunteers? And then all these 3 documents we developed last year during this pandemic period, and many states are using, and particularly the CBSE, it was used in all the CBSE schools, and the people have been benefited. So just I'm giving this idea in the beginning, because this is we initiated last year at the national level. Then with some modification, adaptation, the state have used, and the CBSE schools are using. So this is something just I wanted to say in the beginning. This is, but now I think in this session we are having 4 presentations, and I'm very happy that the first presentation from the government of Odisha, and Madam Poonam Guha, Director SP, Government of Odisha, will make the presentation. Second one is from Bhutan. That is a great opportunity, because the international experiences, we should know what is happening in other countries. And I think 3 presenters are there. Number 1, Daso Kama Gale, Director General of Department of School Education. Then number 2, Daso Tenjin Finlay, Director General of Youth and Sports. Then number 3, Mr. Doku, Chief of Policy and Planning Division of Ministry of Education. Then the third one by Madam Richa Chaudhary, CEO Bastar Chhattisgarh. And then the fourth one we have from Bihar experience, reaching the last mile, by Mr. Kishore Bombay. I think we should stick to the time. I think all the presentations are good presentations, because it has come after the field experience. So you are going to make nice presentation, and in advance I congratulate you. And I request you to stick to the time, so that we can finish the session on time. Madam Patnaik, if you would like to say something, or we should start.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Chairperson, Sir, Mr. Senapati. It is a great honor to have this session with 1 national presentation and 2 international presentation. There is a little change in the final agenda, and today we would be hearing we have the privilege also to hear from the director, ST, Mrs. Poonam Guha Tapas Kumar, the great initiative in terms of reaching to the children in the most disadvantaged area of Odisha while the COVID was in the peak, and the department conceptualized a very, very novel, innovative approach, community-based, system-based approach, and which reached to around 300,000 children across the state. And so we would be hearing about that. And then the second presentation would be from the Bhutan. There is also change in the speakers, and Mrs. Reena Thapa is here. And so there would be two presenters from that, and we would be doing that. Third presentation is from Chhattisgarh in terms of the SEEK, the ensuring the continuity of learning during pandemic times. That is also a very, very popular program connecting to the community and looking at this alternative approach and seeing COVID as an opportunity to also explore and experiment with new approaches when the schools were closed. And the fourth one is Maldives, where we would be hearing the technology use, and which is also give us the strength to a road ahead for building our infrastructure in the state and the country. So instead of wasting time, now I would request Poonam ma'am to actually start the presentation on the alternative learning mentorship program, which was done by the SCST department. And we are happy to mention it here that also we join hands with the department for initiation, documentation, and monitoring of this this program. So I request Tapas like Poonam ma'am to start the presentation, please. Welcome, ma'am. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Chairperson sir and Ladita ji. I have a presentation. I'll request Manas to kindly share it.
Yes, it is on the screen.
The Alternate Learning and Mentorship Program, an initiative of the ST and SC Development, Minorities and Backward Classes Welfare Department. Here I'd like to say that the program was conceptualized and envisaged by a great team here in the department with the leadership of Principal Secretary Ranjana Chopra ma'am as the lead. I'd also like to thank Principal Secretary ma'am and Director SC/ST/RTI for this opportunity to present this initiative. So as we see here, on 23rd March 2020, we had taken a decision by the state government to vacate all the SSD hostels, and children were sent back to schools, sent back to their homes. I'd like to mention here that we have around 7,000 hostels and roughly 5.5 lakh children studying in those hostels. So actually vacating those hostels and sending the children back in a matter of 7 days was a very big task at that point of time, which we could successfully complete with the provision of some advance scholarship to the students as directed by the state government at that point of time. However, some of the problems that we saw once the students went back to their home was, first of all, that parents were not prepared for home learning, for homeschooling. Secondly, as we all learned from our respected speakers in the morning, that the acute problem of geographical divide and digital learning devices, and obviously leading to loss of learning and educational outcomes. There was also a very big chance that dropout rates would go high. The difficulty in monitoring and preventing all forms of violence against children, and it has also been seen that it is at home that sometimes children are being abused. So the closure of schools was affecting children both emotionally and mentally due to limited access to their friends, to their teachers, to society, and of course they did not have any space to grow. Therefore, the closure of schools was not just an obstacle to continued education, but also a loss of safe social spaces. And this is the context in which we decided to go for ALMP. And this alternate learning and mentorship program, we had to reach to about 4.5 lakh vulnerable, tribal and backward classes students and provide access to education to them both offline and online. Because as we know, the online mode is also very limited, And therefore, and at the same time, we had also to look at the COVID-19 pandemic, which was at its full peak at that point of time, to maintain COVID appropriate behavior. So therefore, this ALMP program was conceptualized. The basic objectives of the program were: first, to keep the students connected to the learning process; second, to extend psychosocial and psycho-emotional support to them so that they know that somebody is there on whom they can rely. Third, and very important, was to conduct focused dialogue with them, staying in their houses and their houses, and also with their parents, on some contextual themes like basics of COVID, COVID appropriate behavior, WASH outcomes, adolescent wellness, psychosocial support, parental participation in learning, adolescent reproductive sexual health, life skills, etc. And of course, we also had a capacity building of teachers, matrons, ANMs from time to time. Next. Here we can see that we had engaged around 4,700 mentor teachers. These teachers were the same teachers who used to teach the students in school. So we were able to engage 4,700 mentor teachers who had been engaged in the program to help overcome the issues related to lack of mobile connectivity and internet connectivity. As we know, teledensity is really a problem in these areas, and internet access even more difficult because of the geographical inaccessibility. So these mentor teachers were tagged village-wise. We had approximately 19,000 villages, and one mentor was tagged to 5 villages. They had a very big provision of psychosocial counseling, even career counseling, promotion of creative works of the students, remedial coaching, bridge coaching to all the students in this critical time of the pandemic. And they also taught COVID appropriate behavior to the students. As you can see in these photographs, we had asked them to engage the students in open spaces and also to wear mask and also use sanitizer as the case may be. Weekly online capacity building of these mentor teachers was also done by experts from the state level here in the department. Overall, we could cover 2.5 lakh ST and SC students through this initiative. This was about the mentor teacher. Next is the e-Suvidya provision, which is the online classes, which all of us are pretty accustomed to. But even the online classes was done in a very systematic manner. We had the state resource group and a district resource group. We have 30 districts. Each district has one district welfare officer. He has an entire team. We also have somebody called the project administrator ITDA. So sometimes if need be, the PITDA also used to help the DW in the process. The state resource group had many experts from various fields of education, and they had come together to prepare content class-wise, subject-wise, and chapter-wise. And the entire syllabus was broken down into micro-syllabus, so that the student could understand even though he was at home and there was actually nobody to really guide him. But the entire content was classified in a manner that would be student friendly and conducive to his learning. And apart from that, we were able to have about 4,200 videos in a short span of 3 months through continuous handholding with various partner agencies and our own teachers. And these videos are still available with us, and we are also going to use them in the second phase now. These videos were transmitted from the state level group to the district level group, and at the district level group they had something like the headmaster level group, which they used to transmit this information. Here we could cover about 50,000 students. Next. Another very important part of this paradigm is counseling, because as we know, during this difficult time, students more than studies, they need somebody to really talk to speak to make them understand their concerns, and therefore telecounseling was introduced. We have a very dedicated team of matrons, ANMs. Generally, these are the matrons who are the first point of contact of the students in the hostels, and therefore we decided to have these matrons speak to the students. We collected all the phone numbers of the matrons. We already had the numbers of the students. We gave handholding support to the matrons through capacity building programs. And then we gave them a list of questions which they had to ask the students. First, actually in the first phase, we started out only with girl students. Later on, we expanded this program to boy students as well, because even boys go through a number of crises which need to be taken care of. And generally, they used to discuss about wellness, about health, about their mental status, whether anybody is suicidal. In spite of our best efforts, we have seen that there have been incidents of child marriage during this time. So that also was a trigger for us to start this particular initiative. And our issues of COVID appropriate behavior, etc. So this counseling with the STSC students through the matrons and the ANMs actually helped us in a big way. Next. Apart from that, development of workbooks. This was a very unique initiative by the department, and here SC/ST RTI contributed a lot, especially the development of workbooks of standard 10th and standard 12th. I am very happy to announce here that the 10th board results are department has a pass percentage of about 99.64. And of course, apart from the other factors involved, these workbooks certainly would have gone into the making of this nice result for our students this year. So these workbooks also played a very important role this year in the education paradigm. Next. These were physically delivered to the students through our DWs and the dedicated team that we have in the district. No program actually becomes successful without monitoring. Here in the department, we have something called the School Hostel Monitoring Committee. And it is through this particular committee, through our dedicated team that is there, who actually on almost a daily basis used to get a report from the field from the DWs as to how the ALMP is actually going. There have been at least 3 instances where we had to stop the LMP because of either too much report of COVID in some district, or where sometimes there was a problem in the district which we faced from the mentor teachers, and primarily because of the increase in the incidence of COVID. And apart from that, we also had a lot of interaction with the mentor teachers on a day-to-day basis, telling us the problems that students also were facing. Here, actually, we came to know about these issues of child marriage, issues of children suffering emotionally, and then we used to actually try to handhold the mentor teachers in preventing all these kinds of issues and bringing it to the notice of the district collector, bringing it to the notice of the district child protection unit, and taking redressal measures. So the monitoring mechanism was a very robust mechanism which actually helped us to see to it that the entire program really went off smoothly. Thank you. Next. These are some of the glimpses of ALMP. I request all of you to kindly have a look. Next. As we see, our mission e-Suvidya was very well accepted by the community, by parents. And here I would like to specifically thank Unicef, Monica Nelson ma'am and Lalita Patnaik ma'am for their very timely support in taking this initiative to national and international levels as well. We also have one video where the entire edifice of alternative learning and mentorship program was actually broadcast on NDTV. I'll be showing it to you at the end. It's just a 2-minute video. And this is how we actually were able to connect to our children. Though we were having this digital divide, we had geographical divide. But with whatever resources we had, we were able to really reach our children in the best manner possible in the first phase of ALMP. Next. These are some more media coverage issues that one could kindly go through. The children, the animated children on the right, if you could see the boy and the girl, the name that we have given was Karu and Miru. So we are going to use this particular logo when the children come back to the school, and we are sure that that day will come early. We are just waiting when these children will come back to school, and this is how we really conceptualize our children, Karu and Viru, tribal children, coming back to school happily. Thank you. Okay, next. Here, I would like to also mention something that was done by the Eklavya Model Residential Schools here in our state. We have 27 Eklavya Model Residential Schools which follow the CBSE pattern, and we have very limited, we have only 7,000 students here. So therefore, we undertook a different exercise. The exercise was to have the guidebooks prepared, to prepare question sets, and also to have these guidebooks and question sets given to the students, and ask them to send the sets back to the respective schools within a definite time frame, say 15 days. And we used to ask the principals of these 27 EMRS to monitor whether or not their students are able to send the sets back to them in time. So it was this was done through postal network, and we really were able to achieve this in record time. It took us about 5-6 months time to achieve the entire exercise. We have students from class 6 to 12th in our Eklavya Model Residential Schools, and therefore this model of teaching the students through postal network, surface mail, really helped us also in this particular difficult situation, and we will be taking it further from here. Next.
Ma'am, in the interest of the time, because there are 3 more presentations, so we would request you to finish it in another 3 to 5 minutes, please.
Sure. Manas, just next. You may kindly see this is the model. ORG is the state resource group, then the principal resource group, and the teacher resource group. Next. We also had some extracurricular activities for the students, the extracurricular activities. One is the Srujani, where 4,000 children out of 7,000 children of EMRS participated, and we were able to give certificates to all of them. We had a very big ceremony with the next commissioner, Shri Asit Gopal sir. And this also, I'm sure, helped us in hunting the inner talents of students and keeping them motivated during this critical pandemic. Next. 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 These are some of the photos you can see the children drew in their drew and gave it to us. We had judges from Lalit Kala Academy also to judge it. Next. 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 Unicef also supported us with wash initiatives, and here we were able to have wash stations in all our schools, in PITD and DW offices, RO plant, incinerators, rainwater harvesting. One overall surveillance has been done with Unicef. A 1-month-long campaign was also done, and this is an ongoing process. The Global Hand Washing Day 2020, as we know, last year, and also the World Toilet Day on 19th November. So I thank UNICEF WASH program also for this initiative. It was a very relevant program at that point of time because of the COVID situation at hand. Next. 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 Now, as ma'am was mentioning in the morning, we have launched the ALMP, we are going to launch the ALMP2 program with community-based teaching learning, where community volunteers would be there. They would be given kits, including breach course material for standard 1 to 5 and 6 to 8. And we will be having one community volunteer in every village. And from that, we are also going to have one school in a van program, which would be known as Gyan Sanjog, that is School Gyan Sanjog. For our PVTG areas, we have 19 micro project areas. So these 19 micro project areas, this school van will be moving with the relevant material, including the linguistic divide that ma'am was mentioning in the morning. We will be ensuring that these areas will get the books in multilingual language books in their own language, so that next please, so that it becomes easier for the children in the PVTG areas also to pick up. So Gyan Bandhu, the Gyan Bandhu scheme, as ma'am was mentioning in the morning, would be rolled out in a matter of few days from now. We are in the process of mapping the entire exercise. Once we have the entire database, NGO collaboration is one of our basic objectives. We will be also ensuring that the NGOs help us in various methods, including volunteers and the booklets that they have with them. I am sure that this is going to help us in taking learning in a major way ahead. Next. This is the school Gyan Sanjog that I was mentioning. And for our PVTG areas, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, 19 MPs. Next. This is the expected outcome from our Gyan Bandhus. Apart from this, only 2 points. One is Samhati that ma'am mentioned in the morning, a multilingual education course that has been designed by our team, which includes various modules, dictionaries, and materials. We will also be having a laboratory here at the SCST RTI for teaching and learning tribal languages, 21 tribal languages in our state. And secondly, I am very glad to announce here and to inform everybody that we have last year 140 hostels of our state ISO certified, and this is just done with the able leadership of Ranjana Chopra ma'am and the entire team here. So with this, I thank all of you, sir, Rushikesh sir and Ladita ma'am for giving me this opportunity to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Very nice presentation. I'm really very happy that you have taken care of everything, not only the learning. Along with learning, you have taken care of the socio-emotional aspect that is most important, and the counseling for mental health and monitoring, hand-holding, and development of handbook. This is a really very good study, and definitely our tribal children will be benefited a lot. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, actually, after all the other speakers complete their round, sir, if you have time, maybe one video is there that you can show later on, not now, after the speakers complete.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for an exciting, comprehensive presentation. So there could be little change. I think, Richa ma'am, you are able to hear us from the CEO of Bastar, Chhattisgarh. So she can, you are requested to present the SEEK, the ensuring continuity of learning during pandemic time, the Chhattisgarh experience. So you are, I know that you have already logged in. If you are able to hear us, please start the presentation.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am presently posted in Bastar. SEEK program we implemented when I was in Raigad. So we were working with Unicef on their early grade literacy program. While we were working out the formalities, the pandemic struck and there was a full national lockdown was ordered. So we could not go ahead with EGL, and then we sat down with the Unicef state team and we worked out on modalities where we could ensure that the learning, we can continue imparting learning to our children. Our first matter of concern was our teachers were unable to go to the schools. Second point was we do not have extensive mobile networks, so connecting through online classes is a bit difficult. And third was it is very difficult for primary school children to actually sit in an online class and pay attention. So the program that we designed was that we decided to recruit volunteers from the local village. And we decided to train them with the SEEK Pitara, and we would be giving them videos 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, mainly focused on language and a bit on mathematics, and then some sports related learnings. And the first step was the selection of volunteers. I think our teachers were instrumental in that. We focused on people who had 10th or 12th level education. And we prioritized women volunteers because they were there and they were much more interested in participating with us. The second part was training of the volunteers and giving them basic learning materials, working sheets, and how to use those videos, how to sit in a mohalla class. That was done using, we gave them training through online. with the SEEK team. The third part was how do we engage? Since teachers cannot go to schools, it is not possible for them to even monitor each and every school personally. So teachers were deputed to monitor the volunteers. Every mohalla, we selected 2 volunteers. And the learning material transmission, SEEK Unicef team was engaged with, I think, 7 or 8 districts. They would share the videos every morning on the 3 decided days. The videos were shared through WhatsApp groups. We had 3 levels of WhatsApp groups. In the at the school level, the volunteers and the teachers and the CACs were anchors. The cluster academic coordinators were the anchors for this. And at the district level, BOs, BRCs, and Jila Panchayat and collectors were involved in monitoring it. So every day, the video was shared, and we would get a feedback from the field how many volunteers were able to download the videos and show it to the students. What was interesting, I think, was that when we engaged the community, the volunteers, the families who were earlier, what we see is in first level learners whose parents are not educated, the entire responsibility of learning falls on the school. When they go back home, they don't have that kind of atmosphere where the family is able to support them in learning. But what we learned through SEEK was that families were also deeply engaged in their learnings. Even fathers who would go out for work, they would leave their mobile phones with the child so that he or she can attend the class. In some areas, even mothers who were illiterate even participated with the kids, and they were very happily learning with the children. Second was we were able to do this immediately after the lockdown. So I think around May we started. Later on, the state government also came out with the idea of mohalla classes. Though SEEK we integrated with the mohalla classes. And for the middle and upper higher secondary schools, there were online classes that we were doing through CG School Net. The response of the teams, initially we faced a bit of attrition of volunteers because it was not a paid volunteer thing. It was purely a voluntary effort. Some volunteers were not able to engage the students. So there was around 20% attrition, but CACs and teachers were able to do better identification, and we were able to continue with the SEEK Mitras later on. I think what is important here is that rather than waiting for the state to come up with a scheme and give us directions, a lot of districts, not just Raigad, this was done in Raigad, a lot of districts came with the ideas, and we were able to implement it. And then the state also took note of it and decided to go statewide with this. The focus of the learning material was based on the videos were, again, there was a Didi who would come and teach the kids about science and maths. And so it wasn't a textbook learning. We were able to engage the students using local materials. They were using leaves, they were using stones and sticks and whatever is available at the household level. And there were 2 groups, first and second were in one group. So videos for first and second were one set of videos, and for third, fourth, and fifth, there were another set of videos. Those videos are still available. And SEEK program, we had 9 blocks in Raigad. So we started with 3 blocks, and later on we implemented it throughout the district, and we were able to scale it up. Learnings from first 3 blocks were used, and around 96% of the primary level students were engaged with this. That's pretty much about it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Richa ma'am. It was really inspiring, and you have also been, you articulated so well the process and the benefits for the most disadvantaged. And jointly with Unicef, I think you have also created a model during the peak COVID time. And so we share the border. So there will be many exchanges in terms of these alternative approaches. So please stay on, and we would see that chat box. If there are any questions, we'll direct you. And so now we have Bhutan team with us. It's a great pleasure to welcome the Bhutan team. And so there with little change in the time schedule, I think one of the government representative from Bhutan, Mr. Karma, has probably not able to join us with his other engagement. So, but we welcome Vishnu and as well as Ms. Reena Thapa to share their presentation. We will run the presentation from here, but Reena ji is requested to share their idea about their program. So that will be a great learning for all of us who have joined in this webinar for taking these new steps and new approaches for our learning. Welcome, Reena ji. Thank you so much for joining, and apology for a little delay in the time schedule, because with so many presenters, I think it was too tight. So that is how we got delayed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I, on behalf of the Ministry of Education Bhutan, would like to thank the organizing team to actually have invited us to speak about our experiences and then what we have done actually because of the COVID situation. So maybe I'd like to request for the slides. Thank you. As we can see, the experience that we are going to share is basically on strengthening WASH infrastructure in the schools to enhance the health and safety of children and staff. So this is what we are going to present. I mean, I'm going to present because my other other presenter is not able to. So I'll take you through the whole presentation. So next slide, please. Okay, so in this slide, let me take you through how COVID started in our country and where it has reached. So it was on 5th March 2020 that the first case was detected in Bhutan. And then immediately on 6th March, the schools in 3 districts were closed. And the next day, again, another 3 district schools in another 3 districts were closed. And finally, on 18th March, all the schools were closed. And after some time, maybe classes for grades 9 and 12 reopened, but on 18th March, the schools were closed. All schools were closed in the country. And currently, as of June 3rd, we have 47 positive cases in the country. But over the few days, these cases have increased again. So some schools in the south are still closed. Certain parts of the country are still closed. Some districts in the country are still experiencing lockdown because of the increasing number of cases. But there are schools who have also continued to provide the teaching learning. Now, this slide talks about the total number of schools in a country. There are 609 schools in all grades and 17,170,000 students. And let me talk briefly about the guidelines that we send to the schools and centers. Centers here mean the early learning centers and also the non-formal education centers. And irrespective of the level and then the level of the schools, all schools were closed and the guidelines were also sent accordingly. And the few of the guidelines that mentioned here is to have continuous water supply and hand washing stations with soap was mandatory to all the reopening schools. And also staggered timing was one of the guidelines which was mandatory for schools to implement, and all routes to the school to and fro, exit and entry to be marked so that the children know that where to enter and where to exit from, so that there is no rush in the schools, so that the social distance can be maintained in the schools. And similarly, the other guideline was to have waste bins placed in strategic locations so that children do not litter the classrooms and then the school and increase the risk of spreading COVID. And similarly, after the implementation of all the guidelines, there had to be monitoring of the wash facilities. So the Ministry of Education and officials from the ministry went to the schools around to see if there are continuous supply of water and enough hand stations and tap points in the schools to facilitate hand washing practices. Next slide, please. So this is the slide that shows the number of tap points in schools before COVID and after COVID. So it has almost increased the double. The three colors show the different regions of the country: the western region, the central region, and the eastern region. And then the last part shows the current total number of tap points in the country in the three different regions. So basically, there is an increase of the installation of the hand washing stations and also the tap points, so which is a positive point that we see. Next slide, please. Right. So in the first phase, with support from the Unicef, 50,000 bars of soap and 5 sets of 5,000 hand washing posters were distributed to all the 609 schools in the country, and also installation of hand washing facilities, and also if there were already some hand washing facilities, to renovate and have continuous supply of water, and then the toilets. So even if there were toilets that were not being used, they were renovated and being used. And then when it comes to the percentage, 77% of hand washing stations were upgraded in the schools. Maybe there were some taps which are not functional, maybe there were just 1 or 2 hand washing stations, but 77% increase is there in the first phase in the installation of the hand washing stations. In the second phase, another 70,000 soap bars and 4,000 hand washing posters were distributed to the schools around the country. And with this, there were also safe water and hand washing at the entrance. So every school has an entrance, separate entrance and exit points, and every entrance has a hand washing station, meaning as soon as you enter the school campus, you have to first wash your hands and then get it tested on the for your temperature, and also maybe if there is what do you call that, hand sanitizers. So but having a hand washing station at every entrance was mandatory and still is. Next slide. Now going to the psychosocial support services, of course, there was also mention of the same services in our friends who presented from India. And similarly, we also have had similar programs in our country because of the COVID situation, the pandemic. And just to begin with a brief COVID situation of the country before the COVID, our country has around more than 600 schools. As I mentioned, there are 609 schools in the country, and only 146 schools have school guidance counselors in the secondary schools. And had it not been for the COVID pandemic, we would have never identified providing psychosocial support services and providing online counseling as our training needs for the service providers, especially the counselors. And thanks to COVID that we identified this as a priority and trained our counselors on these areas. And although only 146 schools have counselors, we have trained all the teachers on basic helping skills in 2019 during the nationwide professional development program, meaning providing psychosocial support mechanism was already there in the schools, but more so spearheaded by the school guidance counselors. Next slide. A few of the activities and programs initiated, a previous slide, please. Right. A few of the programs and activities initiated during the pandemic, during the situation, was a lot of programs and activities were provided, for students and parents to take care of their mental health and well-being, or during the closure of the schools and also after the reopening of the schools. As I go to the next slides, I'll present to you what were some of the activities and programs that we conducted. Next initiative taken was creating a Facebook page by the name Sheri Counseling Services under the guidance of Honorable Minister and Secretary of the Minister of Education, Bhutan. It was created in March 2020 as soon as the schools were closed. This was the fastest and the quickest, easiest way to reach out to students, to listen to them, and then also to provide services for the psychosocial issues that they experience at homes when the schools were closed. In addition to that, unlike the traditional counseling practices, a lot of online counseling and consultation services were sought, which was unusual before the COVID situation. But because of COVID situation, a lot of people, individuals, avail online counseling and consultation services. The other important initiative taken was the selection of Dzongkhag, the district focal counselors. Our counselors in the country are spread around all over the country in 20 districts, and then each district has around 10 to 15 counselors, but not all schools have counselors. And each Dzongkhag, each district counselor, each district has a focal counselor who will take care of the rest of the counselors in the district. And each counselor in the district, in the school, has other schools under him or her, which meaning the counselors, each counselor will reach out to the schools, other schools, sister schools where there are no counselors. And because of the district focal counselors, the districts also have the contingency plan to reach out to schools without counselors. There are around more than 450 students who have, 450 schools that do not have counselors. And we have this contingency plan to reach out to even those schools without the counselors. Next slide. Thank you. Let me share that our His Majesty the King always emphasizes on you cannot give what you don't have. And in order to be able to provide quality services, we felt the need to train our counselors adequately on the interventions and the services that they are going to provide because of the pandemic. And these are few trainings that we provided to the school guidance counselors. First training that we gave was the training on the family interventions, and around 133 school guidance counselors attended the training. The need for this training came from the biannual reports that the counselors submit to the division in the ministry. And through the reports, we analyze and then find out which are the most common issues that the children face. And this family issues was one of the most common issues that the children faced. And that's how we felt the need to train our counselors on family interventions. The next one is the psychosocial support services, where 138 school guidance counselors. The previous slide, please. So the next activity is the training that we conducted was the psychosocial support services, providing psychosocial support services during the emergencies. So we have been providing psychosocial support services, but because this is the as far as I know, this is the first time that the country is hit by such a pandemic, and then providing psychosocial support during emergencies wasn't of our priority. So now this has become a priority, and because of the closure of the schools, the closure of the schools led to a lot of psychosocial issues in children. And then this was one of the priority areas that we wanted to train our counselors on, which would be helpful to help our children during the emergencies like now. And The other one is online counseling skills and techniques, which was attended by around 147 schools. The total number of counselors in the country, 147 counselors. And after very soon, another 32 counselors are going to join us who have graduated and then have been employed by the ministry. So another 32 will be added to 147. During the closure of the schools and more so during the lockdowns, our counselors received more cases online. But the fact was that our counselors were never trained on providing online counseling to our children, which is very different from the traditional counseling practices. And we felt the need, and that's why we trained our counselors on providing online counseling skills. That's why for now we have a lot of individuals seeking support online than face-to-face. And the fourth one, the very important one, is the psychosocial support services rollout training to the 578 focal teachers. Now, these 578 focal teachers were identified from the schools where there are no counselors, one focal teacher from each school where there is no counselor. And these focal teachers were selected based on the criteria. A few of the criteria set were someone who has attended the basic helping skills, or someone who has availed or taken up courses related to counseling. For example, in our country, we have two courses that teachers might have taken earlier. Courses like postgraduate diploma in contemplative counseling psychology, or Masters of Arts in contemplative counseling psychology, or maybe relevant counseling courses they might have taken from outside the country. And also we took into account some teachers who had taken initiative to help children by consulting and then referring the children to the service providers like the counselors. And now the main objective of training these focal teachers is to be able to reach out to all the students in all the schools in the country, irrespective of whether there is a counselor or not. And the focal teachers will work in collaboration with the counselors in identifying issues in children and also making referrals to the service providers. And not limited to this, the focal teachers will also work in liaise with the school guidance counselors and provide intervention activities and also preventive activities in the schools with support from the school guidance counselors. Next slide.
Yes, I think Karina ji, the next presenter are also ready. So we are requesting you to finish in another 2 minutes, please.
Sure.
Is that possible? Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And some of the programs and activities conducted during the closure of the school and during the lockdown was the psychosocial support services for students in school for grades PP to 8 and for students from grades 9 to 12 that was conducted in school face-to-face, but the earlier one was conducted face-to-face and also online. The other activity was the conduct of the welcome back check-in session to the students, especially after the reopening of the schools this year. And the students from grades PP, pre-primary to class 8. And these students needed to be reconnected to the school, the peers, the learning system, the teachers. And that was the need. And that's why this program was conducted. The other activity that was conducted was school-based parenting education and awareness program to around 80 schools because we could not conduct to the southern schools because of the lockdown and then the closure of the schools, and reached out to around 6,912 parents. Yes, please, next slide. So as mentioned earlier, seeking online counseling consultation is on the rise, and then as of now, around 3,499 individuals have sought support. Some sought support face-to-face and others through other social media platforms I mentioned in the slide. Yes, the next slide, please. The final slide, this is what we learned. We just want to share. The pandemic was a big surprise to us. We was not prepared, but this has taught us a lesson to be prepared, irrespective of whether we face this kind of disasters and pandemics or not. And washing schools plays the best alternative to keep away the insidious. Because of the hand washing stations, a lot of non-communicable diseases were also prevented, not just the COVID, but also non-communicable diseases. And we have learned that children get equally affected psychologically as much as the adults do. And some of the challenges was resource mobilization was a challenge because of the geographical terrain of the country. And finally, the one way forward that we have mentioned here is we need to innovate and design online alternatives for uninterrupted education and all the other psychosocial support services. So with this, I thank you on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Bhutan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Arinaji, for an exciting presentation and also talking about solutions. And we have similar terrain here in the state. So that will be definitely, we'll keep in mind the suggestions and the things which has worked. And we would be connected. And at this context, I would also appreciate and acknowledge the support provided by Vishnu from Unicef and as well as Ivan for connecting us. And this networking would continue. And there are some few questions. So once at the end of this session, we will come back, or later on, we could seek for some answer for this. So now at this moment, in this technical session, we would like to hear from Maldives, and the most exciting presentation that we are looking forward to in terms of the ICT solution. So Mr. Musa Adam is here. That we see. So you have been also given the co-host rights. So we would request you for the presentation, and we can run the presentation at this end once you tell us how to go about it. So looking forward to Mr. Musa Adam from Maldives. So it's a great pleasure that you confirmed and you also agreed to participate in this technical deliberation in finding alternative approaches in this difficult time, COVID, and you have some solid evidences.
Hi, thank you. I hope you hear me well.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and very good afternoon to you all. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting us, the Maldives, to share our experience. We are pleased to share our experience. Together with me, I have my colleagues, Mr. Ibrahim Ashif Rashid, the Director General of Policy Planning, and Ms. Shuhda Ridwan, Education Development Officer Coordinator from NIE. It's really interesting to see how different states are adopting their resources using high-tech and low-tech technologies in the time of pandemic to reach the students. Anyway, actually, in the context of Maldives, the first slide is a kind of a bit of a summary of how we have been our learning arrangement, the distance learning and effectiveness and its reach in the Maldives. Mainly the learning was continued in 3 different modes: the use of television and online classes, and also the physical classes. So this slide actually is a summary of how the classes were conducted during the pandemic. Next slide, please. Just a bit of a background for those who are new to, in terms of the geography of the Maldives. We have 1,190 islands, of which 195 are inhabited, and we have 20 atolls. We have 212 government schools, 9 are private schools, which is grade 1 and above. Of course, there are other private schools, but below grade 1, like foundation, LKG and UKG. But number of private school teaching above grade 1, we have 9 private schools and 2 universities. We have over 12,000 teachers, 91,000 students, and of which 75,000 students are in government school. In terms of COVID-19, we could say that we have had, I mean, the wave in, I mean, 4 different waves, of which currently we are in the 4th wave, and I mean, which has hit hardest. In the first wave itself, I mean, all the schools were closed physically for over 3 months. Currently, actually, at this moment, we are in the term break. The next academic year would open the next month, 10th of next month. So now at the moment we are on official school holiday. But before the closure, over 70 schools were closed, and approximately like 50,000 students teaching were on the hold. In terms of learning arrangement, as I mentioned, the learning arrangement was mainly in 3 different modes, but across the nation learning was reduced. And we find that foundation and primary students were affected most. In terms of economic impact, some of the private schools were, I mean, had to quit due to their, I mean, reduction in their fee collection and other problems. So the students moved to public schools, and since the fee collections were reduced. Next slide, please. In terms of major activities during the COVID-19, one of the very first engagement was, I mean, preparation. We prepared an education response plan. In this slide, we have actually highlighted the major activities under the learning dimension. The education response plan has major 5 dimensions: the safety, health and well-being, psychosocial support, learning, and also building the resilience. So here we have highlighted the activities done under the learning dimension. As mentioned, 3 different mode of learning, that is physical class, online classes, and televised classes. We conducted an internet and access survey across the nation, and a learning resource repository, we call it FILA portal, was established, which is an online repository for students and teachers, where the students can access like lesson notes, PPTs, videos, and stuff like that. Provision of free mobile data to students and teachers. With the support from service providers, we provided free mobile data for students monthly, like 5 GB mobile data for students to continue with their learning. In terms of teacher training, we conducted many programs, but one of the major program during the pandemic in terms of teacher training was the Google Certified Educator Training Program for capacity building. Up to today, I think over 45% of our public school teachers have been certified as Google Certified Educator Training educators. As mentioned before, the televised classes were phone-made televised lessons. The teachers used their smartphone at home, or like using some outdoor activity events. So they used their phone to make some televised class. These video clips were then sent to the central office. Once it's validated, it is central. I mean, validated, it is then sent to the national television station, the PSM, to be telecasted across the nation. We conducted a back to school campaign when some of the region started opening with some ease of lockdown. In the back to school campaign, we asked students about the online classes, and the feedback from the student was very much useful in terms of improving the online classes that was being held at the moment. In terms of monitoring student attendance, we used our education management system with a special focus on monitoring different modes of learning. The MEMS was quickly kind of configured to adapt to capture the attendance data, like, I mean, the number of students who are joining to the online classes, who are watching the televised lessons, and also using the online platform, the Google Classes. We conducted an access engagement survey with the help. Actually, a lot of these activities were conducted with the help of Unicef. And the other major activity is the analysis of the Google Meet classes, and also provision of Wi-Fi dongles to the most economically vulnerable families. Here we distributed 1,500 dongles to the most vulnerable families or households. Of course, we had to extend our academic calendar, and we just completed a 1.5 year of academic calendar, and we are now in the closure. We conducted a key performance indicator report for the education response plan, the compliance, and like many other states, we also had to go for a condensed curriculum in order to compensate for the loss of learning, learning hours. Before I proceed, we had an, when the pandemic hit on us, before the pandemic, actually, we had the opportunity to give a tablet for each student, actually for grade 3 and above. So every student of grade 3 and above were provided with a tablet, and a learning platform was kind of in place. So it was we had to do some little actually not little, but quite a lot of things in order to keep the things in order. Next slide, please. So one of the major study that we conduct with the help of Unicef was the Access Engagement Survey, where we 10,000 parents and 14,000 or close to 15,000 students and 3,000 teachers were data were collected from these number of participants. We used multi-sectoral team first to coordinate the survey. A tool was developed in collaboration with these people from the National Bureau of Statistics and NGO, the Unicef, Maldives MOI department, and school principal. The survey was conducted with parents, students, and teachers. This survey was conducted for 2 rounds. During these 2 rounds, special attention was paid to gather data on vulnerable students and parents who could not reach through online means. Actually, the primary mean of collecting the data was through online mean. So we used enumerators to reach to the parents and students who were not able to reach through the online means, like parents who could not fill the online form. The enumerators were used to collect data from such parents. The vulnerable groups was identified from the MOI list and by through the means of education management information system. Next slide, please. According to these studies, internet availability at home, it is reported that 75% of our students have internet, a broadband connection at home, and this finding is actually consistent with other surveys that we conducted in different interval of the pandemic. Next slide, please. We have selected some of the question, and one of the question here is, on average, how many hours a day the students spend on learning. Here the number of hours spent on learning is referred to online learning. So it's like about 44% of students have reported 4 or more hours, or roughly 75% of students spent 2 hours or more. Of course, 1% of students indicated not spending any time in online learning. Next slide, please. And satisfaction of online classes, we asked the students how satisfied they are with the online classes. More than half, 54% are satisfied or very satisfied with the online classes. like I mentioned, we got a lot of feedback from students in order to address the areas that they have highlighted while conducting the online classes. Next slide, please. We also asked how they learned. So most of them, they have reported, of course we do know that, I mean, we were using Google platform, so it's like 25% of the students reported use of Google Meet, Google Classes, and televised classes. There are other platforms, but mostly Viber and other social application were used for communication with the parents and informing for the information sharing. Next slide, please. The other analysis that we conducted was the analysis of the online classes. Actually, Google Meet keeps a log of all the Meet session in the admin console. So it's a log of like if a student joined the online session, there is this log which keeps which has kind of every detail of the student, all the users. So like how much the duration, who joins, and I mean which user account they so we kind of downloaded all these lows, I mean what can I say, we downloaded all the logs and consolidated into one, and analyzed the logs to see how, I mean, the number of online classes they have conducted, the number of daily hours spent, and both nationally and at every institution level. So we can kind of check a given institution and see how many classes they conducted, and even in terms of a specific user, how much they have engaged. Next slide, please. The analysis, we have just selected few slides from the analysis. Here in the greater Malé city, according to the log, it looks like from, actually this is past year, last year from June to November, the we have done this analysis, and it looks like over 80% of our students were able to log into the online classes. Here, for our analysis purpose, we only took students who were in the online, I mean, a session is considered if it is more than 20 minutes. So of course there are a few sessions that are more than 20 sessions, and there are a few sessions which are less than 20 minutes. But for the analysis purpose, we only selected the sessions which are more than 20 minutes and less than 40 minutes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I think anyway, some of the key recommendation that what we have learned from this all these things is there are some major focus areas for us to strengthen. In one is strengthening the support to vulnerable families. Next, increase the access to online learning through improving the connectivity and affordability. Even though there is a high level of penetration in terms of internet penetration, still there are I mean number of students, like I mentioned, the tablet has been not provided to all the students, so we need to improve our connectivity and through affordability as well, in terms of providing the internet connectivity and also the devices. And the other aspect is building the teacher capacity, and particularly for online assessment and pedagogy. And last not the least, conduct a learning loss assessment and provide a remedial conduct remedial program to mitigate the learning loss. I think that's it. Next slide, please. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all the panelists, Poonam ma'am, Richa,
Shuhuda and ask if you have any, maybe you can add some more points.
Yes, I think there is one question on the chat box asking for the condensed curriculum, what it means. So if Sir can, Director General Sir from Maldives can explain this.
Yeah, condensed curriculum. Actually, we identified the main important component from each syllabus to be covered. So since since we had to reduce the learning hours, we had to identify what would be the most critical component in the curriculum to be taught, so that when they go to the next grade, there is the continuity of learning in terms of the curriculum, so that they understand, I mean, so that there is no kind of learning gap when if we are to skip any lesson or any part of the curriculum. But since the academic year is later extended, we got the opportunity to cover the part that we kind of skipped when we did the condensed curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. There are few more observations and comments, and one question. Poonam ma'am, you are here. So the question is, like, the volunteers is one of the medium to reach out to the children who are most disadvantaged. But there are few observations on the chat box talking about what is the incentive for them and how to sustain their motivation. If there is any thought on that, that will be useful for all the participants who are attending this webinar for Take Forward. And the country and the state presentations have presented their way forward and the innovation, but as well as key recommendations. So that probably we could look at. So over to Poonam ma'am.
See, first of all, the volunteers, they would be known as Gyan Bandhu, and Gyan Bandhu is a seamless wisdom companion. He would be a companion to the students during this critical time of COVID. And we have very consciously taken a decision not to give any kind of remuneration to the volunteer, because he is going to be a wisdom companion and we cannot actually pay for any wisdom that is being imparted. Wisdom is priceless, first of all. And secondly, we are also going to give one kit to the volunteer, wherein there will be 2 booklets. One will be comprising material from standard 1 to 5, and the other will be from standard 6 to 8, so that he or she can just travel across the village and just teach the students. This is more or less a very important initiative where we will request civil society to come together, to stand together as one, and to see to it the rights of our children are not infringed. So I am sure that remuneration is too small a word when we come to something as big and divine as Gyan Bandhu scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There are a few other suggestions which has also been reinforced in the state and the country presentations. I think it's a great learning experience, this session. And that is also for the way ahead. I think there are a lot of suggestions which can work instead of the volunteers payment. You very rightly said that it is Gyan Bandhu, but at the same time, to sustain their motivation, other means of some kind of a incentivizing them through the data card or a pack for the village or something can be looked at. Maldives and Bhutan has also talked about some of those, including Chhattisgarh. So we can probably look at that to have a more concrete way forward for the state, for the country, and other countries are also learning from our experience. So the ALMP, the psychosocial support, is very well acknowledged by Bhutan, how they have been systematically going on this. So I think we are learning. It's a good learning exposure and opportunity to learn and relearn, and then probably have a robust plan for the state. So over to the chairperson, sir, Mr. Senapati, for the concluding remarks. And thank you so much and the director is also here. I think he would be at the end also, would be sharing his views. in terms of the overall the first day webinar. So over to Senapati sir, please.
Thank you, madam. Actually, this session was very interesting. All the presentations were very nice, and it is a really very good learning experience for all of us, because we had 4 presentations, one from Odisha, because we are conducting the program here, and the presentation was very nice, very comprehensive, and a lot of focus is an alternative model, because that is the way out. Because we have to not only take care of their learning, also their socio-emotional aspect, that is more important. Similarly, the program by the Chhattisgarh, Madam Richa Chaudhary, that focus is on community engagement, because we have also experienced a similar problem. And those who are having the facility, that internet, smartphone, everything, they may not face much problem. But the problem is where our children are not having any facility, and where there only we can reach through volunteers, through community engagement. Though that is something very nice, and that is the need of our, because even in NCERT, our model, because when we came out with the alternative calendar, then we faced many problem, because the students were not having mobile and misuse of this online platform. Then ultimately we came out with the learning enhancement program, and there also we came out with this model and suggested. So the point is that we are doing it in a very comprehensive way. We are not only taking care of their learning, and along with the learning, we are taking care of their mental health. That counseling part, that is most important, because during this period our students are facing a lot of problems. I remember when immediately after this pandemic, when we received some call that students are facing many mental health issues, and we requested our counselor. In NCERT, we have provided this training and to many teachers. So we requested them, they started the service voluntarily. Then we launched the Soyog program, and it is a very interesting program. And I think Bhutan is also taking care of this. And actually, there is a shortage of counselor in our country, in everywhere, because we need more counselors, but actually less number of counselors are there. And particularly during this period, we need more counselors. So what we are also doing, we are providing this counseling and training to all the teachers, because every teacher is a counselor. And I am very happy that Gopal, Bhutan has taken care of this. And this is also a good model that and was saying that sanitation, and also this socio-emotional aspect, that is more important, because learning, it's okay, because students are learning and parents are helping them using what is available at home, but their mental health is important. That is why we should advise them to be engaged in other activities, not only how they can play, how they can concentrate on different physical activities, maybe yoga or some other activities. And the last study presented by Maldives, that is really very interesting and very comprehensive way they have done it, because what I feel that they have used technology, but to what extent the technology is going to influence? They have conducted research. That is more interesting. So what percentage of students are satisfied? What percentage of students are not satisfied? And what is the recommendation? That means how really we are going to provide this facility to the family who are deprived, who are facing a lot of problems, and how we are going to build the capacity of the teachers, and how we are going to provide the access, and also learning loss. That is most important, learning loss, because during this pandemic period, there's a lot of learning loss everywhere, not only in India, all over the world. And that how we are going to analyze that learning loss, because what we have done in our country, that we have also reduced the syllabus in our CBSE school, that syllabus was reduced. Then a lot of questions came through media. Then we thought this we can take care of, because ultimately our students should learn. So keeping in view the learning outcome, we thought that we should come out with the alternative academic calendar, because learning is more important. What we are doing, our students should enjoy learning. They should observe the situation. They should formulate their hypothesis. They should verify it, and ultimately they should construct their knowledge. That is our concern. It may be online, it may be offline. Because even in face-to-face mode, when we are teaching, we expect our student should be engaged, and the very conducive learning environment should be created. Similarly, when we are doing it on through online. And we are requesting the parents that you create conducive learning environment, because children are at home and using the available resources, and that it should be very engaging, very meaningful, and very joyful. And they should not only learn what is the content, what is there in the textbook. They should participate in different activities. There should be more sharing, more storytelling. So that type of environment we should create, because from this COVID experience we have learned a lot. Because I'm very happy, particularly in India, and our teachers now are experts. They are expert in taking online classes, because earlier nobody was using these online classes, and now we all are using this online the approach. That is the only way to overcome this problem. And all over the country, all over the world, and we are doing the same thing. And a lot of variation. I think we are very happy that we have got the experience from Bhutan, we have got the experience from Maldives, and also from India, from Chhattisgarh, from Odisha, and the good work, good initiative. And because this is the need of hour, and we have really tried our best to reach our students, particularly who are facing a lot of problems, a lot of stress. So I'm very happy, and I extend my sincere thanks to all the presenters, and congratulations, because all your presentations are very good, very nice, very effective, very meaningful, and we have got a lot of experiences, and we can use it in the field. And we have learned many things from Maldives, many things from Bhutan, and also from our own country. So this is a very good experience, and I congratulate you all for your nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. I think there is a few questions, and there has been also a chat in terms of whether the children are available, not available, and how the volunteers are reaching another. And those are basically, there are a lot of strong, some social mobilization and community mobilization activities must have been part of the strategy. And I know that in the ALMP, that was one of the strong components. So in the other countries also, and states also, that must have been strong. And and then there has been also the Malkangiri DW also has mentioned about the ALMP was a success. And the ALMP 2, there are certain recommendations that will be definitely kept in mind to, and as much as possible when the recommendation gets finalized, and with the affordability and accessibility, this would be definitely would be looked at. So thank you all the presenter. It was a really, really exciting, energetic journey. But this has been all possible because of the director SCSC RTI for this platform, with the MOTA's support and a collaboration with Unicef. So now I would request the host, the chief leader. In a digital mode, there was initial little apprehension how it would work, but it has been seamless. And so we are very thankful being partner to this. So over to Othas, Professor Othas.
Thank you, Lalita. I must thank all the presenters of this session. In fact, this session was basically presentation by 2 Indian experiences and 2 international experiences. Well, I was away for some time, but then ALMP experience, that is Odisha's experience, our director ST, Mrs. Guha, has made a presentation. We know about it, we were part of it. That is considered as one of the best models which other states are also trying to adopt from us. The Maldives experience I just heard, and I heard that Chhattisgarh experience and Bhutan experiences are also very, very exciting and insightful. And in the first session, the 3 presentations, I must tell you, Pratham's experiment is a unique experiment. And the insight that Professor Mahanti gave on mother tongue based education and NEP, how tribal education fits in, presented by Professor Senapati, who was part of the workforce for 2020 NEP formulation, was really, really insightful. You see, we have one more day to go, but my initial remark is there is no single model which can be adopted for the entire world or for the entire country. We have state-specific issues, we have community-specific issues, if you see ST and general caste as two components. And we have also local issues which need to be taken into consideration. If you see these experiences, each experience has got some uniqueness which can be borrowed. And there are many commonalities that you find amongst and the presentations that were made. But at the end of the day one, I can only tell you that neither technology is going to happen alone, standalone, nor physical presence is going to work standalone. It has to be a combination of both. It has to become a hybrid mode. I don't say that ALMP that we have done is the best in the world, but then there has to be, online mode, and there also has to be offline mode in physical presence. It has to be dwelt upon properly, and a kind of guideline or a kind of way forward, taking the good examples into consideration, will be drawn up by next week end. And we are going to submit it to our government, and we will also submit it to all the participating states and Government of India. What is going on? Countries also. What is going on at present? What are the models? What are the commonalities? What are the specialties? What can be taken together so that it becomes a comprehensive one? I compliment each one of you who had presented, who had chaired, who had co-chaired, and also for those who have very carefully listened to us and have put a number of things in the chat box, which means it was interesting, it was engaging, and it has definitely given you a lot of insight to learn. Friends, tomorrow we have got 2 more sessions, and these 2 sessions are also going to be extremely important. There will be one Sri Lankan experience, one experience from Assam, the other experience from Kerala, another one from Bihar, and one more experience of Pratham, which is done elsewhere. So my request to all of you will be Sri Lanka also. I will request all of you to kindly participate tomorrow. Please listen to the rich deliberations that will be given. And these are all very rare opportunities that one can get, because it is Corona time, and because we are accessing the virtual mode. So I again, thank one and all for your participation, presentation, and for your patience today. And I would request all the presenters to kindly give a full-length paper so that we can bring it out in the shape of a publication, because it is a rare thing that we are getting from you people. And if it sees the light of the day through a publication or e-publication, I think that will add more to the value. So I thank you again with a request to join tomorrow at 10:30. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Senapati Babu, thank you.
Namaskar, namaskar.
Kali apna Senapati Babu, I would request you to kindly please join tomorrow. I know your time may be very precious, but then you are equally precious for us.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, sir. Dr. Ota.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Poonam.
Thank you.
I missed your presentation, but I have no regrets because we are all part of ALMP. So
That
I
is
know what
definitely.
you, but I can see it from the recording and get back to you. Thank you. Thank you again so much, Poonam.
Thank you. Thank you, Senapati sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lalita ji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.